Hello and welcome back to the spookiest day of the week. We are talking about not just a Friday, but a Friday the 13th. It's thankfully it's not too freaky. Vince Vaughn hasn't showed up right yet, Trev.
No, we could drop that title and just give the much more generic title, so we don't have to be extra spooked.
Exactly. So we are here with our semi-annual, or however you want to put it, Friday the 13th coverage. Whenever a 13th pops up that happens to be on a Friday, we have to dig out, our little disc here and pay tribute to the man that, and I know back in like the 1930s and 40s, Trev, everybody was spooky on Friday the 13th when they saw a black cat pass their way. But let's be honest, guys of our generation, Friday the 13th means one thing, right?
Oh yeah, I thought you were going to say in the 1930s when we started doing these Friday the 13th episodes. Yeah. I'm looking forward to the day when we're in our our wheelchairs and we record our Jason Goes to Hell commentary.
Exactly. I was just thinking about that. And I actually did some prep. I looked at the calendar all the way up to 2024. And like back when we covered the first Friday movie, I want to say that was like 2017. Unfortunately, then I kind of dropped the ball and forgot about the whole thing. And then we didn't do one for like another 3 years. So we're trying to play catch up. But unfortunately, the Scorpio is not on our side because this calendar is not looking good. We are not having a year with multiple Friday 13ths for like a while. So
yeah, where I'm not going anywhere. So
we're not. You're not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere, and these movies ain't going anywhere because I feel like I won't say they really had a resurgence because they never really went away in a way, but it's like they're always plugging along. Every month they're popping up. They're leaving one streaming service, they're going to another one, so there's constantly fans just around the globe getting exposed to it.
Yeah, and of course the Scream Factory box set, which I am utilizing for this recording. I feel like that really brought it back into the discussion in a big way again. So yeah, it's definitely one that always pops up. That's the smart thing. I saw someone say that on Twitter once. That a little tip for screenwriters. If you are writing a screenplay, just make sure you have somebody say a specific date in that movie, because then people will always watch that movie on that date. And then here you have an entire franchise that's dedicated to a date that sometimes pops up multiple times during the year. So there was clever of them. Now, before we start rolling into it, I will ask you, because we usually record these ahead of time and then release on Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
But on the day itself, on Friday the 13th, are you the type who makes sure to watch at least one of these every time?
Usually not. And I don't know, I usually watch a horror movie, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. But I feel like the Friday the 13th, because let's be honest, not some of these movies do, but some they don't really work the day into the movie that much.
No, it's not. I mean, I don't know if any of them take place on, maybe because it's Jason's birthday, right? Yeah. So it's a title. It was just a title Sean Cunningham came up with to sell the premise, put that ad variety. But yeah, I'm like with you. I'm pretty inconsistent on it.
Yeah, I definitely have done that before. I want to say the last time I did was multiple years ago when they were on Netflix or whatever. And a couple years ago, because I never wanted to commit and buy a DVD box set because they kept releasing new ones. I was like, I'm just waiting for the ultimate DVD box set. You know what I mean? And then it's then the Blu-rays came individually, and I was like, the only one I really bought separately was this one. So I only had this one for a longest time, and I think I did watch it on one or two Friday the 13th. But then then I got tired of this one, so I started jumping around. But finally, I finally committed last year to the Paramount box set, and then literally, I'm not kidding, 3 weeks later, the Scream one got announced. I'm like, okay, I'll suck it up. I'll buy the Scream Factory box set, but then I'm done.
Yeah. I think I told you before, the Scream Factory box set came along, and I was adamant. I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. It's too expensive. Yeah. I already have these. I had that Paramount 8-film Blu-ray set, and I had the other New Line ones on DVD. I was like, I'm fine. And then eventually I caved. They took the price down enough, and me, I'm sure I've said this in the previous 2 episodes. This is my favorite franchise. Honestly, I was never not going to get that box set. I was just fooling myself for a little bit,
Yeah, I think I didn't really get too much wrapped up in the fear. I never bought the deluxe thing from Screen. I didn't pay $160 and get the poster and all that kind of shit. I was like, I took the cheap way out, which at the time I did the pre-order, but I went through deep discount, and I thought I was getting like the deal of the century with tax, shipping, everything. It was like $123, and like since then this has like been routinely like they can't give this thing away. Like there's so many sites selling it for $100 even, but and then Paramount's releasing their set again with digital codes because like that really matters to Friday fans.
Yeah, I guess.
Anyway, we'll get rolling along here on this amazing film that actually we'll get into it, but this movie does not get a lot of love now, Trev, but at the time it was monumental for the franchise.
Oh, sure. I mean, for the gimmick alone, but this might be a little bit more contentious than our regular Friday the 13th installments, because I will say, you just said this fine film and everything. I'm gonna have to admit this is not one of my favorite entries in the franchise. So I'll talk about that as we watch it. Maybe you can try to convince me, but you know, as a Friday fan, I do love them all. I will watch any of them, even the ones I don't like so much. So
I love this movie, but I will concede, and we'll get into it, but I will concede this is almost like the Godzilla 1998 of the Friday the 13th films. So anyway, we'll get rolling here. We have a pause around the 2 or 3 second mark. No matter what version you're watching, Scream Factory, Paramount release, they all start out the same with the Paramount logo. It starts out just as a mountain. We have it at 2-3 seconds here. It's just a mountain looking at you. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, go. When I say go, hit play on your remotes or your PS3 controllers if you're going down memory lane. All right, everybody, 1, 2, 3, go. Or if you got them fancy streamers, if you got them digital code box sets. Which, by the way, like, I bought the Paramount set, which is just the Paramount movies, the first 7, 8, whatever it was. I got that for like $17, Trev. Like the new, like I looked on Vudu because I was like, why is the new set that Paramount's putting out with the code so expensive? If you just want the Paramount codes, like the Paramount digital bundle, it's like $55 still. Yeah.
I was just looking at my shelf and thinking about how, I have this amazing Friday the 13th Scream Factory box set now with that awesome art. And I'm like you, I didn't get the Mega Deluxe one, but man, sometimes I look at that art and wish I did have that poster because it's pretty great. And then I have that on the shelf with my really nice Phantasm box set, which is the whole trilogy. I got the Chucky box set, which is in kind of a fun box. It looks like a Chucky doll box. And then I just had that little rinky-dinky Nightmare on Elm Street Blu-ray that comes in like a slim case with all the films, Yep. I was like, it was very affordable when I got it, and it's not like I probably wouldn't upgrade that, but it's still kind of sad that the Nightmare on Elm Street one just looks so sad next to the others. Anyways, here on previously on Friday the 13th.
Exactly. So for people who maybe their memories aren't as crisp as ours, we should say that what was the entry in the franchise where they finally stopped this? I want to say Part 6 finally broke the mold, right?
Yeah, Part 6 has no... Well, I guess I'm trying to think if Part 5 actually shows any footage from Part 4, but it starts with like the little prologue.
Dream sequence thing. Yeah.
But for people who wonder about these, if we have young listeners who we are actually their introduction to these old movies, the reason they would do these is because this is before home video.
Right.
So there was really the thought that if you're going to see this movie a year after the last one, you might not remember how the last movie ended, and you hadn't had a chance to revisit it on DVD. It probably hadn't played on cable yet. But also I'll never turn down an opportunity to spend a little bit more time with Ginny.
Exactly.
Even if it's just the footage we've seen. Now, should we briefly, since she's on screen, should we briefly talk about the 2 ideas that were kind of nixed for this film, both of which focused on her?
Yeah, so basically they're re-showing the ending of Friday the 13th Part 2, which had Jenny, which is played by Amy Steele. And it was kind of like beginning with Part 2, they thought about bringing, who was it, Adrienne King back, and they kind of did, but then they didn't in a way.
Yeah.
And I feel like, they were thinking about taking another stab at real continuity here and having the character of Ginny come back for Part 3. But yeah, so it's like, wasn't the main one that they really wanted to do was have her in a mental hospital?
Yeah, it started off with her in a mental hospital, and Jason tracks her down and starts, slash people in the hospital, which ultimately would have been probably felt just too much like Halloween 2.
Yeah.
And then the other one was where she's kind of post-traumatic now, and she's learning self-defense and going back to college. And then she finds Paul's corpse inside her dorm, as Jason has apparently brought it there and put it there, and so she decides to go back and finish him off once and for all. So she kind of inherits the Tommy Jarvis in Part 6 kind of role of coming back. I'm kind of bummed we didn't get either of those, only because neither of them necessarily sound great on paper, But as someone who's totally Team Ginny, I would have loved to have seen her get another shot at it.
Yeah, like, I can't cry too much because I am a fan of part 3. It was my favorite for, like, a little while. Like, growing up, my favorite was always part 6 because of Zombie Jason, but then I got into this one because of its kind of, like, over-the-top pop sensibilities. But looking back on it, it's, like, I won't say it's faded, like, I don't think it's as good anymore, but it's, like, yeah, because they didn't really choose to go that direction with doing real continuity with the part 2 Survivor. I'm kind of like, just like, and obviously part 2 is like, is become more of my dark horse, because like part 2, like when you grow up, it's one of those ones that's not really in the limelight as much because he doesn't have the hockey mask. But now looking back on it, I like part 2 a lot more just because the novelty of it doesn't quite have the formula down. So like, yeah,
I do think in recent years it seems like part 2 has become one of the favorites, though. I feel like when you look at people's rankings, part 2 has definitely risen, and I think Ginny's a big part of that too. I mean, if you want to hear us talk more about this, you can go listen to our previous commentary. But part 6 is my favorite Friday film, but Ginny is my favorite final girl of the entire series. There's just something so I don't know, wholesome and regular girl about her. And that's, somewhat true of the girl in this one as well, and we'll talk about that, but Ginny is still on the top for me.
Yeah, like, I don't know if it's, like, a thing of, like, which came first, the chicken or the egg, but, like, I did notice about 7 or 8 years ago, they actually started making, instead of just generic Jason figures, they started making more movie-specific merchandise, and, like, part 2 merchandise came back, and I just started, like, kind of, like, I don't know if it just was either them wanting to kind of be back in the limelight a little bit, or just the fans calling them back. But I did see like Adrian King and Amy Steele doing like a lot of appearances together, interviews, just like social media things. And like I wonder if it's like really because part 2 came back and got popular, or if it was just like the thing of like, okay, like we put like a little bit of limelight back onto it and that made people like it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, I was going to ask you, Trev, do you know for a fact, because I meant to, like, sit here and scrub them up together and do this, is there anything about this part 2, like, re-showing the footage that's different, like, maybe an alternate take? It seems like it's shot for shot. What was it?
Well, this part right here, I mean, the Jason crawling,
yeah,
that's, like, new, but I think everything else is just a direct, like, port over.
Yeah. Because when you watch this in 3D, by the way, if anybody has the 3D version, there's actually a disclaimer at the beginning of the 3D version that says the beginning of this movie is in 2D, but you still need the glass. It says you still need the special glasses. So like basically you just watch it with the glasses on for no reason until that shot of him crawling, and then that was the shot where it becomes 3D movie. So
they weren't as clever as Freddy's Dead to have a character put on 3D glasses in the movie to tell you when to put yours on.
Exactly. You know what I liked? It was kind of like a gimmick. I actually saw that what do you call it? The Bryan Singer Superman movie. And it was Superman Returns. It was in a IMAX theater, and it was like before really the big 3D resurgence. It was like right before, and like my buddy was like, "Oh, we should go see it here because like you can see it in 3D, whatever." So like we went. And, like, they only converted certain sequences into 3D, Warner Brothers did. Like, maybe about 20 minutes of it. So they actually had, like, a little guide on the screen, just, like, a little, like, icon of glasses popped up onto the screen. And then you would put the glasses back on. And then when the sequence is over, even though you could tell, kind of, they would still put it back up, say, glasses off or whatever. You take them off. I thought that was actually... I don't know, like, I guess some people probably wouldn't like that solution, but I think 3D, like, if it was treated, like, more special like that, or, like even, like, the way Freddy's Dead had just the ending in 3D, I think that's actually, like, a cool, like, old William Castle type gimmick that would be fun.
Sure. It's not too different than having cigarette burns already in the image, if you're being used to that. So I should say really quickly, as much as this is not one of my favorite films, I'm not going to deny that this disco-fied version of this theme music, it slaps, man. I love this.
It bops. You stole my line. I was going to say it slaps. So, like, we actually, we talked a little bit about the 3D aspect of it. And, I'm like a 3D fan, and I always say about it. I even had the original Paramount Blu-ray, which came with the little glasses or whatever, red and blue glasses. They converted to anaglyph. But for somebody who doesn't have a 3D set, Trev, do you resent, like other fans do, whenever you watch this one, you have to put up with the really grainy footage that they had needed to use to make it 3D?
No, not really, since it's already like a movie I'm iffy on anyways. It doesn't bother me too much. I just accept it for what it is. I always know it's gonna be one of the Friday the 13th that doesn't look the best because of that. But I also understand, yes, I'm not watching it in the proper format. And I will say I've actually never seen this in 3D except like the dumb like red blue kind of 3D. But I've never seen like a real like 3D version of this in the theater or on like a real 3D TV with the legit 3D Blu-ray.
Yeah, it's a little weird. Like, I think the 3D version is good. I think that red-blue version actually, like, if you just want to talk about the 3D effect, actually is very good. But obviously, it tints the whole movie. It doesn't look right. But I gotta say, like, I kind of, because I didn't see this in the theater either when it came out. I wasn't old enough. I think technically this come out like 82 or 83, Trev. I can never remember.
This is 82.
82, yeah. So I was, depending on what time of year this came out, I was like roughly either 4 or about to turn 5 when this came out. And I don't know if anybody would have said this at the time. People were smart enough, but you're actually not supposed to, I don't know, did you hear this, Trev? You're not supposed to actually view any 3D until you're at least 6 years old.
No, I hadn't heard that, but that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, it's because something about your optic nerves are still. So, even if my dad would have wanted to take me to this, it's probably a good idea because I probably would have horrible Coke bottle glasses now from seeing it. But, yeah, like the 3D aspect, and it was like that thing back then because there was no, obviously, 3D Blu-ray, which even now there's hardly any 3D Blu-ray, but like, they knew once this left theaters, it would never be left in 3D. So, like, if you didn't, like, know that this was in 3D for, like, many years, Trev, like, when you went to the, whatever, video store as a kid, it just said Friday the 13th Part 3,
Yeah, you just watch the movie and wonder why these people keep waving stuff in your face.
Yeah.
And that's really the thing about this movie, I thankfully have grown to be able to, like, laugh at it and take it as part of the camp value. But this movie actually does kind of represent, like, my least favorite kind of 3D, which is just the very gimmicky, hey, look, we are 3D kind of approach, and I think that really annoyed me more when I was young. Now I can giggle at it, but we'll certainly. There's already one with the lady here, her husband, kind of putting a stick right in the frame. But I also thought it was kind of interesting, talking about continuity, and these first 4 Fridays do a pretty decent job of maintaining this somewhat semblance of continuity with like the previous Leons and everything. It's pretty interesting that first look at Jason we get there. He's in the Friday the 13th Part 2 Get Up, but you can already tell they've nixed the long hair. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if we were meant to believe, did he shave his head really briefly? Is that him trying to like disguise himself? Or I know they just really didn't care. But
yeah, I always wondered about that, why the continuity didn't stick. Because the one thing I wanted to say is like you kind of see it even in these shots here where Jason is like stealing the clothes off the clothesline or whatever. And you can even tell when he's crawling, like, they changed the body type considerably of the actor playing Jason.
Well, and this was a new actor. This was a stuntman named Richard Brooker, and in fact, he was very thin, and they said he had to pad himself up a lot to even look a little bulkier, because they just didn't really like how thin he looked when he was playing Jason initially. So he's wearing some extra layers underneath his clothes. But I believe the decision to get rid of the hair was that was more like they felt like they screwed up with the second one. They wanted to return to the look he had during the jump scare at the end of the first film. Yeah,
because in the first one, his head is like completely smooth. Like he has like not one single hair on his head. And then 2, everybody says, "Oh, that's the one where Jason has hair," and it's like he does, but it's almost like very wispy the way it was in the beginning of Jason Goes to Hell. It's just little strands coming off here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, also speaking of padding, Jason wasn't the only one that got padded up. Did you ever notice this man who plays the guy, the slob who runs the grocery store? He's wearing some padding too, and that's to aid the special effect that's coming up here.
Yeah. I think I say, speaking of padding, we're just watching these guys hang out in their store for a very long time here. But
yeah, this is weird. Going back to the whole 3D thing and the way it looks, is I've seen a lot of people, especially when the Scream Factory set came out, because a lot of people kind of rebought it, and they heard like, oh, remasters for the first couple films, whatever. A lot of people complained about the visual quality of this, but I gotta say, like, because I never really even knew for the longest time that this and Jaws 3 were originally in 3D. Mm-hmm. Like, when I would watch them, I would always notice as a kid, like, oh, this, like, looks really bad, like, compared to other movies on TV. And, like, even, like, if you would watch them on DVD. And I gotta say, like, the crappy 2D, because I mean, to be fair, when you watch it in 3D, it looks exactly the same grainy quality. It's just in 3D. But I've kind of like actually, considering that there's like no film grain in movies anymore, Trev, like I've actually have a soft spot for these 3D movies turned into 2D movies. Like I don't know, like it's like, to me, this is like, even though this is like one of the most Hollywood Friday the 13th movies, because it has this shitty de-resed look, like it's one of the more grindhouse looking ones too.
Oh, sure. Now, I guess this scene is kind of where we start a new trend in the Friday the 13th series also. I'm trying to rack my brain a little bit on the first two. The first two kind of established Crystal Lake as being, obviously a small kind of rural town, but not so much populated with Beverly Hillbilly-esque stereotype redneck characters as we start to get here, and this will continue over the next few films. So it's interesting that this is where we start saying, like, oh yeah, the locals here sure are yokels, and that's kind of the sense we're getting with this couple.
Which is kind of like weird too, because like they put them as like low class trash hillbillies, but I think if this were Crystal Lake, whatever, was to be like a more like realistic version, I think you would have a lot more like not dumb, but like countrified people, like hunters, outdoors people. Like I don't think everybody like the way they played is just like the most dumb hillbillies from the ghetto moved out to Camp Crystal Lake.
Well, do you think, I mean, between the movie being in 3D and then that, like with us getting these kind of this, the first murders here being this cartoonish over the top couple, do you just see this as this is the entry in the franchise where they made the conscious decision to say, let's just lean into the cartoonish aspect of this franchise now and just like run with it? That's kind of how I see part 3.
Yeah,
I think reality is now like that's not their primary concern anymore.
Yeah, like by the way, there's a second before where the guy found all his bunnies dead, and every time I see it, it tricks me, because I'm like, oh, why would Jason kill the bunnies? But then the rattlesnake jumps out. I was like, oh no, the rattlesnake killed the bunnies. Jason wouldn't kill them. But yeah, like I guess this is a good time to start talking about it. He's going to get it right in the padding here, Trev. Watch.
Oh yeah.
Oh, look at that pad. It's so square. His chest gets so square when he gets stabbed. Sorry, that moment just cracks me up every time I see it. I also wanted to say too about the lady who plays the bickering wife. Even when I was a kind of a kid, I kind of noticed that this is a younger woman that they're like trying to make look like almost like a grandma. Did you ever pick up on that?
Oh yeah. I mean, and her if you look at the credits, her name's Edna. I mean, it's they're trying to make, but yeah, she's like looks like she's like 25 maybe.
Yeah. Like, I mean, if they would have played it right, like you could almost have played it like it was the guy's daughter, not even his wife. But I'm
surprised they didn't black out a couple of her teeth or something and give him like a corncob pipe. But obviously, this kind of thing reaches its apex in part 5, anyways. That's where they perfect the complete rednecks.
So getting back to like the idea of the franchises changing, I think this definitely was like, because part 2 kind of. Part 2 is kind of like a hybrid stepping stone in between what was in part 1 and what the rest of the franchise would come into. Like part 2 still doesn't fully feel like a Friday film in terms of the formula. Like there's just like all kinds of stuff that happens in Friday 2, Trev, that would never happen in like the rest of the movies. Like Jason is much weaker, he's smaller, he scurries around, he's not lumbering. There's a decision to have like 3/4 of the characters just survive by going to a bar. Like they would never let people get away with that in following Friday films. I think this is the one, because this is the one where like not just the 3D element, but the whole production shifted to being more of a Hollywood movie, less of a the first two were kind of like the Sean Cunningham kind of Frank Mancuso Jr. kind of like carpetbagger things, and this is like, I feel like this is the one where like the studio got the most involved. As much as Paramount denies any involvement with these movies and claims that, these were just made and they showed up on the doorstep and we just released them and collected all the money. Like, I think there was the pressure to be like, make this one bigger, make it more Hollywood commercial. I mean, and it really reflects. I mean, even look at this here. There's palm trees in the background, Trev. I mean, I mean, this, we'll probably be able to point out the differences more when they get to the camp, but it's clearly like not at all the same locale that we saw in the previous 2 films.
Wasn't Hollywood enough for them to clean all the dirt out of that camera lens, I'll tell you that.
No.
Yeah, and that kind of speak. Oh, by the way, when I saw this one, I remember when I was a kid and I first saw this one, I remember being kind of confused because Andy, the boyfriend here of Debbie, I thought was like the same actor as the guy in the wheelchair in part two. But no, they both have the same generic look. Anyways, I was gonna say, in terms of like the directing of it, or what you were saying about it being more Hollywood, I wonder if that's part of why this one has like a less effective for me. I know Steve Miner. So this is the second entry Steve Miner directed. The last one he would direct. And we talked in our part two commentary about how he really wanted to direct part two. He really wanted to kind of step up and, be able to get his own, take on the franchise. But everything I've heard is he was much less enthused to do this one. Like this was kind of more of an obligation, I think.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, he really was like only concentrating on the 3D because that was like the main thing they were worried about. And I know the actors have talked about how they felt like he was never interested in their performance. He was interested in which take would suit the technology of the 3D the best. So I think that kind of, I mean, not that I expect any of these movies to be fantastic, but I do feel this one has like less directorial oomph to it than the second one does, even though it's the same director.
Well, I think too, and I mean, you kind of even saw this in the modern 3D revival, right, Trev? Of like directors had to shoot things certain ways for 3Ds, that 3D, perception, whatever. There was like just the actual angles themselves. It lends us, I don't know what you call it, self-awareness. Like even as a viewer, you're watching, it's like, okay, these are not natural camera angles. These are not natural edit points. It just, like a director is like, I'd say in a way, kind of has one hand tied behind his back when doing a 3D film. You know what I mean?
For sure. I do wish I could have been in the theater in '82 when they passed the joint to the audience in 3D. I bet you that crowd reaction was pretty fantastic.
And that's another thing too, is I'm so curious, like, ever in a revival situation or anything, if it'd be possible to ever see like the actual original 3D print, because people like swear up and down it's amazing. And I mean, obviously, whatever it is, 40 years later, I only have the 3D Blu-ray to go by, and it's like, I've seen way better 3D films, in all honesty. But they claim that it really had the effect of leaping off the screen. And I guess I could see that, it's a lot different watching it on a 40-foot tall screen. As far as talking about the 3D, just going off some images they had in the stills gallery on the special features, from what I can tell, because they had these trade ads saying, oh, this many 3D theaters, and bragging about that they special trained the projectionists and they had to put a special lens over the projectors. It looks like, I think that this film was widely released onto 1,709 screens. And out of those, I believe 813 were in 3D. So, like, I thought it was something where, like, maybe only, like, New York, LA, Chicago got the 3D, but almost half the screens were the 3D presentation. So, I mean, if you were a film goer back then, you might have actually had a good chance of catching this in the format. Mm-hmm. But, okay, like, this is where, like, we get into like this weird thing of like Crazy Ralph has been killed off. So.
Yeah, so what do? You need a crazy kook still, of course. Yeah. And this is perhaps the strangest crazy kook in the entire franchise. Would you agree with that? Abel's a very bizarre character.
Well, and I don't know if it was something where they got behind schedule because of the laborious 3D shooting process or what, but like this really feels like, don't you say that this scene is like so unnecessary onto its own that it feels like it's a setup for something coming later. Abel making a reappearance, and he never does.
Yeah, no, I mean, I somewhat agree with that. I don't know if that's what I like when I was saying earlier about how part 3 is where they start to like lean into what the franchise would become. I almost feel like they're starting to understand the tropes of the franchise, and they're like, okay, we are that franchise now, so of course we need the Doomsayer, and we got rid of our previous Doomsayer, so here's a new one. I'm trying to remember if this is something I'm making up in my head, or if it's true that they were thinking about John Carradine for this part.
Yeah, that sounds familiar, actually. Yeah. I can't remember off the top of my head. I actually remember hearing like who said that, but that does sound familiar.
Yeah, or it's that thing where we're just like Mandela affecting it because it seems like it should be John Carradine.
Yeah,
yeah.
I know for a fact there was something, because I kind of got into the habit of listening to film commentary tracks while I work, just in the background. And I swear there was something in at least the last couple of weeks, I remember somebody saying, oh, we wanted John Carradine for this part, but then he couldn't come through. I can't remember if it was this or like another movie, but
I wonder if there's any. I gotta imagine somewhere someone has made like an Abel fan film, kind of giving his whole prequel story, with all the Friday the 13th fan films on YouTube, many of which I've watched. If no one's got around to that one yet, someone needs to get on it. What do you think of? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say the van has carpet on the walls. That's
what I was about to bring up.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you, what do you think of? First of all, we had vans when I was a kid. I remember certainly having one of the vans that had like TV in it. It seemed like the high-tech technology. And I remember the cool interior of the vans, but we never had one that was carpeted, all wall to wall. Did you ever see that, or any friends? Or
I never saw that. My uncle was a van guy. He had like a legit van like you see in this, but it was like, I think when I was very young, and I don't remember riding it. And then when I got like a little older, I was in like his more modern minivan, which is actually very nice. Like it was almost like being in a limousine. It was like kind of one of those early it was a blue, like I think they were called Aerostar minivans, like a Chevrolet or something like that. But it was less like 70s van. But the reason that he always had vans was they would take out the back row of seats, how they have like them staggered row of seats. They would always take out the back row of seats, and my uncle, my aunt, my cousin, they would always take trips down to North Carolina from Ohio. So they would always just throw a mattress or an air mattress in the back, and that way you could sleep, or somebody could sleep on the way down. You know what I mean?
What do you think it is that like kind of destroyed like the van as like a kind of go-to family vehicle? Why don't we see them much anymore? You think it's just a gas issue, or because I'm just gonna say maybe it's just because of the era I grew up in, but I kind of like vans. I mean, I know obviously the reputation of them now with the white vans and everything.
But it was a big thing culturally in the late 60s through the 70s. I always wanted one of the ones, Trev, with like the ones that had like the air bubble, like either on the top or the side window. I always wanted one of those. I think it was I was just watching a thing about actually Chrysler recently. And I think there was the switch over. I think it was the fuel economy, the gas shortage of the 70s. I think the minivan was like not only dimension-wise smaller than the vans, but they're also like way underpowered. Like, I mean, I think vans always probably steered and handled like shit, to be honest with you. I can't say for sure because I never drove one.
I never drove one. Yeah.
But I think it was just like that minivan boring more version came because of fuel economy. Because obviously I was born in like 77, so like I didn't really have no firsthand knowledge of the gas crisis, but like I was watching some documentaries about car production recently, and specifically sports cars. Like the gas shit pretty much killed the whole sports car category because and a lot of just different things, because like cars just had to change. They lost like half their power, and I'd say it had to be because of that.
Should we talk a little bit about, is this a good opportunity to talk about our final girl here, Chris, Dana Kimmel?
Yeah, and I gotta say,
where does she fall for you in like the hierarchy of leading ladies in Friday the 13th?
I was gonna say, and this is where you and I, I'm sure, are gonna differ. She's one of my favorites, and it's weird because she does not have nearly the moxie that the first two girls did, but she works for me in a Hollywood kind of way.
No, I'm with you actually. So I don't know about one of my favorites, but I will say, like, for whatever my problems with this film are, Chris isn't necessarily one of them. And in fact, when we get near the end, I'll start talking about when I get a little bit more on board with the film. I think Dana Kimmel is interesting because she kind of represents this like in between, this like turning point of the franchise. Because with Adrienne King and Amy Steele, you had kind of very more conventional looking final girls, and that's kind of what I liked about those two, especially with Ginny, just feeling like, she totally felt like she could be your next door neighbor. Dana Kimmel is obviously a little bit more Hollywood glamorous, but not as Hollywood glamorous as we're going to start to see them all become in part 4. I think that's where it starts to be like, well, we need to get like stone cold hotties now.
Yeah.
And I think Dana Kimmel is like a nice kind of in between. And I also do think I have very big issues, and I'll talk about it when these scenes come. I think the entire backstory with Chris and Crystal Lake is very, very bizarre and very strange. But there's something to be said for them trying to do something about this girl who has trauma in her past and trying to overcome it, and the problems it causes in a relationship, and her having intimacy issues because of what was done to her. Like, at least I'm not going to say these are like really intelligent filmmakers, but there's something there. If you want to do kind of gender studies of the franchise, there's some interesting stuff to dive in there. Even though I think they make a lot of mistakes with it continuity wise.
Well, I was just saying before you brought up the final girl issue, I was going to bring up the whole cast in general. I think part 4 is the last one where I really like the whole cast as a whole. There's some people, like I like Reggie the Reckless, and I think her name is Melanie in part 5. Part 6 is a little bit different structured. It's less of a group cast. But I think parts 1 through 4 to me, the one of the strengths and one of the things that make those particular movies rewatchable for me is I like the overall group cast. There's interesting actors spread throughout. This film, like, even though the characters are very stereotypical or archetypes, like, you know, you have Dana Kimmel as the main girl playing the really like pure and clean virgin, almost like a Laurie Strode type, and then you have like the stoner couple, like the fake Tommy Chong and his girlfriend, and then you have like the jock guy and his girlfriend. All they want to do is bang, and then you have Paul Kraka here. What's the main guy's name? Steve?
Rick.
Rick. I'm sorry, yeah, Rick, the hunky guy. And then you have Shelley. And to me, like, the most underrated person that I think they could have done something with is I really like the character of Vera here in this movie. And the reason being is Shelley gets on everybody's nerve. He's constantly playing pranks, pretending like somebody killed him, how he's having accidents, wearing masks, doing weird shit. And, like, I think Vera is, like, she almost, to me, looks like somebody that read for the main role and, like, you know, they didn't quite think was right for her, but they just kind of kept her around the side. But I like this thing of, like, an attractive girl is, like, even though she's initially annoyed, she actually gives Shelley a chance, at least as a friend. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that was like I don't know if this is maybe like one of the first movies to do that, but that's the thing we would see. Like that's a trope now in like kind of slasher and horror movies that we see even continue on to like the recent Fear Street series on Netflix, which is obviously heavily influenced by Friday the 13th. So it's a trope that you definitely see, and this is an early example of it. I don't know. This group's a mixed bag for me. I do like Chris. I'm gonna talk about Shelley more a little later. Talk about my feelings on Shelley. Chuck and Chili, I don't know.
The stoner couple, Chuck and Chili, yeah.
Chuck and Chili, which is like an obvious riff on Cheech and Chong. And I know that at some point they wanted to do Cheech and Chong Meet Jason. And I have to imagine that was before this. And since it didn't happen, that's why they did Chuck and Chili. I don't know if you know a little bit more about that. But I know that was actually like a discussion they'd had at one point to try and replicate the Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein and do Cheech and Chong. And I don't know if they ever actually like took that to them and they said no, or it was an idea that was brought up and didn't really go that far. But Chuck and Chili just being such an obvious like Cheech and Chong like riff, no pun intended. Yeah. I don't know. I don't like those characters very much.
Yeah, I don't either, and I think it would have been fine. Like, I think like the thing that's interesting about them is they seem to be slightly older than the rest of the group. And I think if you just would have gone in that direction and just had these people that were probably like in their late 20s, you know, hanging out with these kids in their early 20s or teens or whatever, I think that would have been an interesting dynamic to kind of like have like a slightly older couple, you know, kind of, you know, commenting on what's going on and how juvenile the kids are or whatnot, and kind of have some contrast. But just making them stoners, it's kind of like so one note that it really doesn't mean anything, you know?
Mm-hmm. By the way, just before we talk about this gang here, we should point out that in a nice, maybe Disney can sponsor this episode because we just saw Shang-Chi comics on the rack there.
Not even on the rack. Aren't they like glued to the side of the aisle?
Like stapled to the shelf for some reason. Yeah.
And there's
an issue of Ghost, which is a really cool old DC like horror anthology title.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was weird. Was Steve Miner angling to do a Shang-Chi adaptation or something?
Perhaps.
But this is an infamous scene, and we're introduced now to the biker gang, who like they kind of serve a minor plot point later on, but these are kind of like, we don't want you to you know get too restless in your seat, you know, like we want to get to the slaughter, but we also want to pace this out to be a quote unquote real movie. So we'll just offer up some very expendable one note characters in this I don't want to say bicycle gang, but motorcycle gang that you know we can kind of off in the middle part of the movie.
I thought you were going to say it's an infamous scene because it's one of the first times, maybe the only time in the entire franchise, that we get the Friday the 13th music used diegetically, to where for some reason the disco version of the Friday the 13th theme song is playing on the radio in the store.
Yeah, I couldn't grasp what was going on there, like why that was. Like, that was weird to me. But this is a great scene, and one of the more better, well, I guess one more standout scenes in 3D. This whole, because you actually have a street to look at here, and this guy comes up, and when he looks in the window, it's very 3D, like you're almost like looking through a windshield. I actually like this guy. I don't know if he even has a character name.
Allie.
Allie, yeah, I actually like him. To me, he's like the only person that's really kind of credible in the gang. Like, the other two people, like, yeah, like, I mean, I'm sure it was just the intention of the film, but like you said, like, leaning into the, like, over-the-top characters, the cartoony characters, whatever. This guy I could legit, buy as a badass biker in any film, even a serious film.
I wonder if Tim Burton and Paul Rubens saw this scene and that inspired them to have the moment in Pee-wee's Big Adventure where Pee-wee knocks down the bikers' motorcycles outside of the club.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, of course.
And every time I see this, I don't know if you noticed, but there's a Rick in his VW Bug, which they're driving, Shelley and Vera are driving. There's a diver down sticker in the back window, and I always wondered, was Rick a scuba diver or just a big Van Halen fan? Some beer product placement too, with a truck just parked on the side of the road, a beer truck.
Yeah. Here's the 3D yo-yo, of course.
Yeah, which, I don't know. I think the best part is actually hits it. Now, I got to bring it up to this couple, and I know what you mean about this guy does look like the guy in the wheelchair from part 2. I think it's more the haircut than anything else. They're like the super horny couple. I think they're the only people, if I remember right, that have sex in the movie. And earlier when they were driving to the camp, like, they were making fun of, the other people were making fun of how horny they are. And the girlfriend said she's pregnant, and then they're like, "Oh, we got to eat this weed. Some cops are coming." She's like, "Oh, I can't eat it. I'm pregnant." I always took that to be a joke, especially because, like, she's like does not look pregnant, and she wants to have tons of sex, and then she gets offered a beer later, and she says, "Yeah." So, what's your take on that, Trev? Is that like a controversy? Because I'm always confused every time I see this movie how I'm supposed to read that. Is she really pregnant, or is it just a joke?
I've always took it as she is really pregnant. I always just figured they did that to add some like extra tragedy to her death, because I mean, in terms of her not looking like, I would just imagine it's early and she's not showing it. So yeah, and I don't know if it's like a controversial thing or people like talk about it a lot, but I just always assumed it was real. Now, let me just quickly say though, hopefully that answered your question, but
yeah, it did.
We just got into like what really bothers me about this film, and that is we just saw the first little shot of Jason just kind of standing over in the barn watching them, and I think that's ultimately, as time has gone by, I realized that my biggest problem with this film is that this is like a very inactive Jason throughout this film. And I understand if you want to praise like the logic and continuity of the series, they're saying that he's kind of recovering from his wounds that he got in part 2, but Jason spends the majority of this film just kind of hiding in the barn, hoping and waiting for victims to come to him, and that's ultimately not as interesting to me as the stalk and slash we get in 2 and 4. So I don't know if you have thoughts on that, but that's a big like negative to this one for me.
So I know he kills people in the daylight in part 2, like when the police, I can't remember if he's a sheriff or whatever, but the police officer finds his shack and he kills him. Like, I know he is active during the day. I honestly always took it that he was hiding in the barn just waiting for nighttime, and then he could come out and start killing. That's just the way I always read it personally.
But even that's weird to me.
Really? But he's exposed too. Like, if you think about that, Trev, he's used to having a facial covering, and for whatever reason, he left his bag at home. So
he's never struck me as someone who seems to care if he's like seen. That's always the odd thing about him, like putting on the mask, is like how much is he like vain, or is it just because of how much he was mocked as a kid?
Yeah. So I guess this is a good time to bring up some information here about the shooting location. I want to say both previous movies, weren't the first 2 shot in New Jersey, Trev?
Yes.
And this one was actually, when the movie has a different sensibility about it, they shot this one in California. This is actually, I'm blanking on the name of it, but this is actually a movie ranch where a bunch of westerns were filmed.
The Valizette Movie Ranch.
That's right, Valizette Movie Ranch. And there's actually a really, I don't know if he had permission. I would hope he had permission. But if you want to see what it looks like today, there's a guy on YouTube called Adam the Woo did a set location visit to this. And pretty much everything was built for this movie. I'm not sure about the barn, if that was built specifically for this movie, because that could have been used in Westerns before. But the actual house was built for this movie. And more interestingly, the quote-unquote lake, and I think you know why I'm saying quote-unquote, Trev, which is supposed to be Camp Crystal Lake, that did not exist in any form. They actually pretty much built a primitive pool, They dug out an area, they laid concrete down and filled it up with water. They put shrubbery and plants, and it looks very fake whenever you see the lake, in all honesty. In this, I kind of like it. It kind of gives that like Hollywood movie look to it, whatever to me. But they had a lot of problems with it. I guess they didn't build it right, so it kept draining. So they had to keep refilling it and trying to patch whatever holes were draining out of it and stuff. So like for the most part, compared to previous Friday films and even some of the ones following it, I think this is like, I mean, obviously besides something like Jason Goes to Space, Jason X or whatever, this is kind of like the most, like, when you say, Trev, artificial location Friday the 13th film.
Yeah, definitely. I always I wasn't sure if that was because just how heavily lit it is. And, we talk about how much this film's in the day, and that's also because, obviously 3D is just going to look better in heavy lighting anyways. But yeah, the heavy lighting isn't, how bright this film isn't helping the artificiality of the sets. Now, before Jason gets his mask in this, we just saw we have these kind of sequences of Austin Powers-esque trying to hide his face.
Yeah.
What do you think is the impetus behind that? Considering that at this point in the franchise, we've already seen what he looks like twice. What's the deal with acting like? I mean, do you think they just already figured out that maybe it would be a fun thing to only see his face once in each film? Were they already thinking like that, or?
I was actually thinking about this when I was watching this Saturday Night Trev, and again, I think it's they're kind of according to them, this was going to be the last one. I guess we should talk about this too. This was going to be the last Friday movie.
Yeah. Well, they said that for the next 5. But...
Exactly, but the idea was to make it a trilogy and end it there. There could be 2 ways of thinking about this, Trev. I took it that they were trying to reinvent the character because he moves differently. He's physically bigger. I thought they were trying to make more of an hulking kind of Frankenstein-esque monster that kind of is in the shadows, and make him a little more like The Shape in a lot of ways. Make him even more very much his footsteps make no sound and he's just whatever. But I also think, too, besides just trying to play up the mystery aspect, I guess it's a good time, Trev, to talk about that. They went through a couple different designs for Jason's look in this movie. Mm-hmm. And because he does get the hockey mask in this movie, but for some reason, there was a desire to never really just have Jason be a deformed man walking around killing people. I guess they didn't think that was scary enough. But in particular, the original design was Stan Winston, and you can see photos of it. I mean, it's recognizable as Jason, just not exactly as we would come to know him in this film in Part 4. There was some filming with the original Jason mask head appliance by Stan Winston, and I'm pretty sure it's what's used when he's at the grocery store in the beginning, going through the clotheslines. But they didn't like it. I think it looked really cool, but according to them, it wasn't scary enough. It wasn't deformed enough, even though it was super deformed. They wanted something different, so they redesigned it. So maybe they just never show his face in this early part, Trev, because they're trying to buy time for them to get the new makeup done. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's something to be said for that. I like that Stan Winston design too, and like any, Friday the 13th fan, I have my favorite under the mask looks of Jason in the various films. But I do think if he had just never worn a mask, and if you just had him be the deformed guy in the entire series, I don't think the character would be nearly as iconic as he is. And I think, the proof of that, not that this is the best one-to-one analogy, but to me, a character like Victor Crowley in Hatchet, I like the Hatchet films, but to me, Victor Crowley can never be quite as iconic because there's just something about the unknowing of a character when they're behind a mask, like a Michael Myers or a Jason. Yeah. Or a Leatherface, and before anyone points out Freddy as the obvious, example of going against that, but that's because Freddy has so much personality, right? So if you remove the personality, then I think you almost need a mask to just let them be like more mysterious.
And also, I know Freddy doesn't technically have a mask. You know, he doesn't have the blank, expressionless mask thing. But he has a very cool, very stylized burn makeup, which is basically a mask. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I mean, and Jason could have as well, but like by this point they were already inconsistent. You know, they hadn't established a look for Jason that would remain, and even once they figure it out, you know, he does look different under the mask in every subsequent sequel.
It's weird too because like they try to play around a lot. Like when the gang members were sneaking around, you saw the boots earlier underneath the van. They try to you know, have certain times kind of fake you out into thinking Jason's nearby when he's not, and then it turns out to be somebody else. They do that a couple times in this movie. I like this version of Jason. This is probably the green shirt look. Like, I guess we should talk about his actual wardrobe. As far as that, you know, not talking about the mask or the hockey mask or whatever. Just the actual physical look of, you know, the regular human arms and hands in the wardrobe. Like, where does this rank for you? Like,
it's if we're talking of like living Jason and not like zombie Jason,
yeah.
I'd say part 4 is probably my favorite, but I like this. Yeah, I do like the green shirt and the gray pants. I prefer part 4.
Is part 4 like it's supposed to look like this, but they just got different clothes? Because
you know, that kind of happens a lot, right? Like, it's just I think in part 4 it just looks like a little darker too and everything. Yeah. But that's kind of like how, you know, when he comes out of the water in one sequel, he's not wearing the same clothes he went into the lake in the previous one, and you just kind of, you know, you continuity, whatever, with these films.
I can never remember anybody's real names in this, or I do remember the real names. But what's Dana Kimmel's name again in this? Chris. Yeah, Chris and Rick here. This little scene they have, and this is where she gives the backstory, and I'll let you take over that. But just the opening part of the scene, Trev, where they're sitting here talking. I love this scene, man. It's like, I don't know. You know how you keep talking about the overly brightly lit, which obviously probably was a 3D thing because this is a night scene and it's still pretty bright. But like Paramount movies, like at this time, they had such a look. Like if you look at Grease 2 around this time, which are also Paramount movies, Paramount was like the bubblegum movie studio at the time. All their productions, at least that I can remember from this time, like they're very bright, slick Hollywood movies. You know what I mean?
And well, it's funny too because like this scene with them out there. I mean, even though we know this is like a movie ranch, if you told me that was like an indoor set, I would believe it.
Yeah,
because it's so artificial. Yeah,
fake trees and everything, and that little babbling brook they have coming out of that sewage pipe or whatever it's supposed to be. Yeah, like I just love the setting of that scene. It's just, I don't know, it's really cool. And this is obviously another infamous 3D gag of the juggling. Which I gotta say, some of these, like, some of them play really well, but, like, the juggling, the yo-yo is a little bit better, but, like, the juggling and especially the popcorn, like, they happen so fast, even if when you are watching them 3D, like, you can tell it's 3D, but the shot doesn't linger enough for you to really, like, get the full effect of it.
They all make me think of that famous Albert Brooks skit about 3D from Saturday Night Live. I don't know if you've seen that, but yeah, that's with the paddle ball and everything. That's what I'm always thinking when I'm watching this movie.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that one, but John Candy did one too, I think for SCTV, where he's like, oh, this is in 3D, and he just keeps reaching towards the camera. Yeah, this is one of the few times that we get to see Vera actually have some interaction here with Shelley. Shelley kind of steals the show for the first half of the movie. He's getting all the attention. So why don't you give us your take on Shelley real quick?
Shelley's a character I've like my feelings have changed on over the years because like many people, I think when I was young I just found Shelley to be annoying, and that's obviously what the film wants you to think. You know, he's played as like the annoying person who, if you were with a group of friends, you wouldn't really want him around because he's just playing pranks on everyone and he's getting on everyone's nerves. And I wonder, I want to hear your opinion on this too, Goat. I wonder if this is a case where my feelings on a character change because of the person who plays them and learning more about them. And I think I just like Larry Zerner so much as a person now. I find him a very interesting figure. You know, as we know, he got into law after this. He's a very successful lawyer. And he talks a lot about like legal cases as they pertain to like the horror genre. And in fact, he's the guy who often on Twitter will give updates on the legal proceedings in the now forever ongoing Friday the 13th copyright dispute that's keeping us from getting any new movies. And it's really cool that he's like stayed attached to the franchise, even though he left acting and found this like other career. but he's always been quick to appear in any documentary, go to conventions. He's so enthusiastic about the series, and I just think Larry Zerner seems really cool, and that's kind of helped me come around on Shelley a little bit, and just like because the movie's trying to make him annoying, it's just not like, obviously the actor's doing a good job. So Shelley's kind of like one of those. He's a good movie nerd. He definitely suits his purpose. And actually, he's like one of the deaths in this that you do feel bad. You're like, oh, that kid. I mean, nobody deserves what happens to them. But with Shelley, you're really like, oh, that's a shame.
I was gonna say too. Wouldn't you agree, Trev, that he's probably the best written character in the whole movie, like with the most depth?
Yeah, but I mean, that's like, what a low bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to say the pregnant girl, I think, is the pregnant girl, and then the stoner girl are like the two like really cardboard cutouts of the movie.
I'm glad. It's sad that they cut there, because I really want to see how the filmmakers think you can have sex in a rope hammock.
Yeah. There could have been some comedy there where they fall out and stuff. That would be good. Now, we'll get back to Shelley in a second because I have a lot to say about him, but I'll let you take this over because this is where we're going to have the flashback.
Yeah, so this is Chris giving her like story of why she Rick has been wondering why she has a kind of hard time being intimate, and why she's also been kind of she feels weird about being back in Crystal Lake, and now she gives this like backstory. About 2 years ago, she was in Crystal Lake with her parents, right? Yeah, and she kind of went out into the woods after like an argument with them, and then she was attacked. She was attacked by this deformed man. And we're about to see her actual like recollection of it, and I'll talk then about my problems with it. But this is another thing. So like the two things that really get to me about this film are how like passive Jason feels in this film, and then this whole storyline. Which, like I said, I think it's interesting that they're trying to have a heroine who's like overcoming trauma and gets to kind of like fight back and overcome that in the end. But continuity-wise, it's so bizarre to say that, okay, so Jason attacked Chris 2 years ago, but let her go, and that obviously ends up putting this like gross sexual assault kind of feeling over it all. Like, are they insinuating that Jason raped Chris? Because that's really how it plays. That's how it comes across, or at least it's like molested her in some sense. I think we're about to see too in the flashback when he attacks her, he's wearing the clothes he's wearing in the rest of the film, which doesn't make any sense because he literally just got that outfit. Again, that's like the filmmakers just not giving a shit. But yeah, I don't know, this whole thing with like Jason either like raping her, which is like not a thing that you want in these films and is obviously never kind of brought up again. But then beyond that, like what is he doing? Is he like catching and releasing these teens? It's just very, very strange.
Yeah, I gotta say, and I could be wrong because it's hard to tell, but I swear this almost looks more like the Stan Winston mask in this thing too, because they don't show very good. But I love the concept of this. I think it was more botched in the execution. I love the idea of there being somebody in this area that had some sort of like chance encounter with Jason and lived to tell the tale, and just nobody believed him. Like I almost wish it was just like she was in the woods. She thought she heard something. She saw a man coming after her. Maybe he popped out of the tree and she just took off running and got away. Like, I like that. But like you said, like, continuity... I'm sorry. My mouth just went to sleep there. Continuity-wise, it makes no sense because Jason should be wearing the attire that he was wearing in part 2. The overalls, the bag over his head. Instead, he's dressed exactly like he is in this movie. And he's not wearing a head covering, which... Even if you were saying, like, oh, we're just going to kind of redesign Jason, he doesn't care that he's deformed, he doesn't need to wear a mask. It's like, well, you can't really say that because, like, in 10 minutes, he's going to get his hockey mask and never, ever want to take it off. So the character clearly wants to wear a mask, you know what I mean? So, like, yeah, I'm with you. The continuity sucks. It's not going to win any awards or whatever, but her doing the verbal retelling, I almost think, like, it would have been one of those things where, like, if I was sitting here editing this and I edited the final version that you see here, I would be like, you know what, like the visual part of the flashback's not very strong. It doesn't really make much sense. Why don't we just go on her telling the story? I think the problem is, like, because what you just said would have been better too. And I think the problem is honestly, like, how far they take that moment. Because if she had just said, and even if we just saw, like, right, I was attacked, I struggled, I managed to get away, and I haven't forgotten. That's traumatic enough. If someone attacks you in the woods and you get away, that's traumatic. The problem is that the way that story ends is she says, he dragged me away, he grabbed my arms, he dragged me along the ground, and then I blacked out.
And when she comes to, he's gone. And that's where I then think, well, I guess you're telling me he raped her then, right? Because like, why else, if she passed out, he didn't murder her? What did he do to her? Like, that's where it gets too skeevy. For not that I'm not, I'm not being like Mr. Prude here, but like, this franchise doesn't need that. Jason doesn't need that. And that's like, unfortunately to me, that's like what hovers over the film then.
Well, I kind of took it to be a thing of more like when she said she blacked out, more like he mistook her for being dead or whatever. And then like he just would have left her there. But that doesn't really fit Jason's MO either, because he usually piles up the bodies somewhere when he has a villain. Like, that's kind of like his trademark as a killer. And just the whole thing of like, I woke up in my bed, it's like, did Jason like deliver you to your front porch steps? like I always took I woke up in my bed to be okay, was this maybe a dream? But it's clearly not a dream, because when she sees Jason's face at the end of the movie, she says, it's you. Like, she remembers, you know what I mean? So
I woke up in my bed, almost makes me think that maybe at some point there was like another part to it where her parents came out and found Jason attacking her, and they chased Jason off somehow, and they brought her back and then told her like this hadn't really happened, or you know what I mean? Like, there's some kind of extra element that's like missing or something.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but I guess even though this is supposed to be a fun popcorn movie, I guess any movie is open to some level of criticism. I think we just gotta chalk it up to kind of bad writing, in all honesty.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and I mean, look, at the end of the day, these are Friday the 13th movies, so it's not like I'm surprised by that. And I mean, one of the joys of this franchise is kind of the sloppiness of it, and the fact of like, this is definitely like, this is one of the most Craven, not Wes Craven, but like financially Craven franchises around. And I said this is my favorite franchise, and that's a big part of it. This is a franchise that every time they made one, they're like, this is the last one, and like, it made too much money, and they're like, well, let's do another one. And you bring in these like, a new crew, and they, the sheer like craziness of this series, and how they try to have continuity for a while, then they just stop caring, and then they have these different approaches. Well, what can you do now? I guess he can fight someone psychic. I guess he can go to New York. I guess he can go to space. This is like what I miss from horror franchises now. There's like such an impetus now with modern horror franchises to make sure it's all maintaining the same quality, and try to have it be like all on the up and up, and everything planned as a trilogy from the get-go. Don't you just kind of miss like the kind of ramshackle shoddiness of like the franchises like this, and like Nightmare on Elm Street and Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Oh yeah, for sure. And I like there's a legal battle going on right now with Friday the 13th stuff, and I'm just like, why do you even care about bringing Jason? Like, I mean, I get it. Jason is a valuable commodity. You put the character in a film, you're gonna make a lot of money. But in the meantime, while you're wasting 3 years at this point of not making Jason, well, actually longer than that, but yeah, over 10 years now.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story. Why haven't you had 2 or 3 new like slasher villain movies come out? You know what I mean? Like, I think there was a little bit of it. I think the last one I can remember that was an earnest effort to really create a new slasher was those Chrome Skull movies that came out direct to video about 10 years ago. But even those kind of died out after the second one. But yeah, and I mean that's why I like the Hatchet movies. But even there, as much as I like them, I think Adam Green is making the mistake of all 4 of them are kind of the same movie. I mean, when you're 4 in, you should have really had Victor Crowley go to like a new location by now. You need to start pushing the insanity of it a little bit more. For sure. I got to say too, because it's a good time to get back to Shelley, is I wanted to spotlight a little bit like his character development. Which, by the way, his get-up of a wetsuit, a spear gun, and a hockey mask. Like, I never understood the inclusion of the hockey mask in his little get-up that he has there. If anything, shouldn't he be wearing a scuba mask? But obviously, it's just a conduit.
Imagine if he had been, and then we would have gotten a bunch of sequels of Jason in a scuba mask following this.
But I like that scene early in the movie where they're in the back of the van, Trev, and they're riding and to the camp or whatever. Well, I guess it's not a camp here. It's just a private property that they're hanging out on, whatever, summer house, whatever. I like the part where Vera is actually like trying to have conversation with them. Like, she gets that he's annoying because he showed up to her doorstep wearing a mask. She gets that he's weird, and I like that part where she says like he's holding like this like little kind of like, I don't know, hat box or whatever. And she's asking like, what is that? And he's like, oh, this is my world. Like, it's kind of clunky dialogue, but he's like, oh, my whole world fits in here or whatever. And I kind of like that thing of like especially looking back on this, he's almost like, I wonder how much they took his inspiration of his character. Like, he's kind of like the prototype Tommy Jarvis here, the way we see in part 4, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely something they were already thinking about. And you were talking earlier about how he's like the best written character, and I kind of like made fun of that a little bit. But I will say I really like that line just now when he, pops out of the water and scares her, and she calls him a jerk, and he says, "Being a jerk is better than being a nothing."
Yeah,
I think that does tell you a lot about his character. That's where you're right. I mean, the little bit of thought that was put in here, and I've met people like that. I've known people like that, right? Where they're like, "Well, I'm just going to be annoying because then at least people will remember me. At least I'll have some kind of impact," and that's definitely a real person. And yeah, it does make him feel a little bit more human than, Chuck and Chili, who are just like the stoners.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think there's even a part where she's like, she's telling him, because I think she generally likes Shelley, as a friend and would hang out with him. And before she leaves to go out to the dock, she's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go out for a second, and when we come back, we'll talk, whatever." Like, I think she's generally like, she sees that there's difficulty in getting through to this guy because he's stuck in this jackass mode of doing these stunts and pranks to get attention. Like, even though the pranks and jokes really aren't wanted by his friends. And like, I think she really is trying to make an earnest attempt to befriend him and kind of talk him out of like changing his personality. Not his personality, but just, you don't need to do this to get people to like you. Just be yourself,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's like a genuine miscommunication that's happening between them where he thinks that because she's not romantically interested, he thinks he kind of needs to be an ass to get her attention. And she's just like, no, if you were just like not pulling the pranks, we could be friends, we could just get along.
Exactly. And that scene where he walked into the barn and that old, like, dried out dusty cow's head falls from the ceiling. I never understood that. Why would you have a cow's head hanging from a rope in a barn?
Yeah. Very weird, yeah, because it seems like it's almost like, did Jason set it up? But no, it's just, and why didn't it fall when the other people came into the barn?
Yeah.
Very, very, very weird. Oh, here's a really good shot of that that lake.
Yeah, that lake. And look at the sand. It's nothing like the rocks and gravel that you get on a lake. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like actual fine.
And then, like I said,
sand.
look how lit this is. How many floodlights are like right behind the camera here?
I know.
Now this is interesting. Like it's as iconic as like hockey mask Jason would become. It's very interesting when you visit this now and think of that the iconography of it. That the first time we see him in the mask, he just kind of saunters out. It's not played like in a big way. There's not any like super epic music. It's very, very casual. You can tell that they did not realize how iconic this would become.
No. And I gotta say, because it's not like he puts the mask on and he powers up and all of a sudden, this is a great bit of performance after he spears her in the eye. He just throws the gun down and walks away. But, yeah, like, what do you think it was about the mask, Trev? It's like, do you think they just, like, because I really, like you said, like, he doesn't change when he has the mask on. Like, do you think that they were just like, we got to get a mask on this guy because maybe they thought the audience didn't want to see such an ugly face for so much of the runtime?
Well, I honestly think the mask was just already kind of a cliche, a trope of the genre a little bit. It's not. I mean, obviously, Michael Myers wore a mask, Leatherface had a mask. There had already been other slasher films with the mask. What year was My Bloody Valentine? Was that even?
I want to say 81, but I could be wrong.
Yeah,
but
so
it was
it's like
definitely before.
Yeah, so I mean, like the mask thing was already kind of a piece of the puzzle. I think I don't know if there's any thinking of it beyond that. I think for them, really, it was more of a matter of what is the mask, and also let's just be honest. A mask is a lot cheaper than putting the actor in the makeup every day on set.
Yeah.
The hockey mask you can slip on and start shooting scenes. If you only see Jason's face once in the film, that means you only got to do the makeup once. Right. So I'm sure that's a big part of it as well.
Yeah, because basically what the guys would wear whenever you see behind the scenes is they kind of have like the headpiece that goes on, but then the front of the face is cut out, so they don't have to do all that application, and they just slip the hockey mask on. But I gotta say, like, I was thinking about this, Trev, because like when you see like the first Halloween, right, or like let's go back even further, right, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because I think that Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out before Halloween. When you see Leatherface, it's like a certain image of the kind of like the flayed raw flesh that's he's wearing as a mask. It's very, the image in itself is very like gross and off-putting. But and when you see Michael Myers on Halloween, it's like he's the blank face. He's blank. Yeah, we love Jason. We're used to it now. We're whatever. But like the hockey mask, like it doesn't really do anything onto itself.
It's interesting. It's interesting because it's almost like it's a mask that came along at the right time, right? Because if you had if these movies had been made, not that they would have been, but if you had made this series back in like the 50s when all the goalies were actually wearing masks like this,
yeah,
it wouldn't have mattered, right? But by this time, this mask was already like a little out of time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
There's this timeless, but not in the right time, but still timeless quality to it. That's not the kind of hockey masks people are used to anymore. But, you know, and it's like, and I have to give it a little credit because you probably know this scope, but it's actually a Detroit Red Wings mask, which is pretty exciting for me.
I didn't know that, no.
Yeah, so the story behind that is they were trying to they hadn't figured out what the mask was going to be yet, and on set they were just kind of talking about it, and one of the 3D supervisors was from Detroit and was a huge hockey fan, and just happened to have a Detroit Red Wings hockey mask, an old one, with him for some reason, and he gave that to Steve Miner and said, well, let's just put this on him for like some of the 3D tests we're doing. And everybody liked the look of it, and so they then took that and like took his mask and made like a new mold of it, beefed it up a little bit, made it a little bigger, and then put the triangles on it. But yeah, so the original Jason mask, the impetus of it came from a Detroit Red Wings goalie mask.
Interesting. A second ago, we had one of the most infamous deaths in the entire franchise, I would say, Trev. There's the guy, the pregnant girl's boyfriend. He likes to walk around on his hands. I don't know why. It's just a silly thing. And it's so they can do this death where Jason chops down his crotch with a machete. Mm-hmm. That death has been lamented so much as being one that was totally neutered, destroyed by the MPAA.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I know it's the super quick version in this, but even in the super quick version, you can kind of tell the legs are phony. I don't know how much better that would have really played with extra seconds of gore.
No, I think there's a nice brutality to the quickness. I'm always in favor of like very quick but brutal looking murders anyways. I think especially with these cheap films, as you just said with the fakeness of it, if you linger sometimes that ruins the effectiveness of it. This death always okay, so what's her character's name?
I always say the pregnant girl.
Debbie. Yeah, Debbie's dead. Oh, we got a little Tom Savini article there. Yep. That was a nice yep. And,
as well as Godzilla for Bird. That's probably Bird's favorite Friday the 13th movie because you see a Godzilla thing.
This one death always kind of bums me out too, that it feels like they're already kind of like redoing murders from the previous films. Like, because that's obviously just the Kevin Bacon murder again. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just wish they'd come up with something a little bit more like unique for her murder, especially like something with the hammock, you know.
I was trying to remember because there kind of are deaths that kind of get repeated throughout the series. Was that the first repeat we had? I'm trying to remember.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, here's the infamous popcorn, but it's just very blurry.
Well, I guess unless you consider like maybe, you know, you got like a cleaver to the face and a machete to the face, both in part. Never mind. I guess that was the first repeat. I was getting my films mixed up for a moment, as will happen since there are 12 of these. I've watched them all too much.
As they are. Now, real quick, how they always said, oh, we'll only do 3, then we'll do 4, then blah, blah, and then eventually they're like, oh, we'll do 13, and then they gave up with that. Do you think, like, I'm trying to think, like, do you count Freddy versus Jason as should it be counted as one of the Friday of, like, the 13, you know what I mean?
I do. I think I consider it like a part of both franchises. I consider it in the numbering of both of them. So to me, there are 12 Friday the 13th movies because I count Freddy vs. Jason. I mean, hey, it's in my box set, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But even though I know people will say it's like, you know, it's more of a Freddy film stylistically, which of course it has to be because, you know, he is the more kind of high concept character. But I think because it follows the continuity to a certain degree, you know, I consider it a Friday film.
So our boy Chuck is going down into this basement or cellar or whatever you want to refer to it.
Root cellar.
Every time I see this, I get strong, heavy flashbacks to the Evil Dead. Do you think there was any influence whatsoever?
No, I know exactly what you mean because it looks exactly like that kind of basement, but I don't know if there's any influence or it's just the fact that that's what basements in these old country homes look like back then with the stone walls and, you know, all the just junk laying all over
Skunks.
the place.
Dead skunks.
If it was a true like Evil Dead homage, there'd be like some poster for another horror film up on the wall or something, you know, to continue that like kind of Craven Raimi one-upmanship. little contest they had going.
No, we get it. We get the death of Chuck here in a second, and it's very basic. Basically, he gets thrown onto the breaker panel and he gets electrocuted because his feet are in, submerged partially in water or whatever. We get Shelley here. We find out he was like off death's whatever kill, but then we get to see him in his last gasping moment. It's like, I don't know how to feel about Jason doing a throat slash. Now that I watch it and what I know about Jason, it feels a little inauthentic to me.
Especially one that was like so like it didn't finish the job, right?
Yeah.
Like that seems like he would Jason throat slash seems like he would cut your head almost completely off.
I do love that moment where Chuck flips on the lights and Jason's just standing behind him.
That's a good visual.
Yeah, I think that kind of got recreated in the remake, didn't it?
There's a moment like that with the lights coming on, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like the electrocution death, like I know they kind of had to just, kind of find, you can't have every death be spectacular, but I thought the electrocution death, even though it's kind of brutal, I don't know, like I feel like I'm getting cheated out of a little bit of gore right there, to be honest.
Maybe the lesson was learned, and then they, in Halloween, was it Halloween 4, Halloween 5, where you have the electrocution, the fuse box death that goes a lot further than that.
I think that's all the way in 6. Yeah, that's in 6.
Okay,
yeah. That's kind of the highlight of that film, kind of. But, yeah, like, okay, now we have the famous poker death, because for some reason Vera took the fireplace poker and just left it in the fire. And now Chili, or whatever her name is going to get it through the body. And I on one of the advertising little things that they included on the Blu-ray, apparently the 3D glasses had a really primitive drawing of the fireplace poker on them. So like for some reason, I guess they were thinking that would be the 3D highlight of the film. And at least on the Blu-ray 3D, it's not very impressive because it happened so quickly. And they said
it also doesn't really come right at you either. It's like more of a profile shot.
Yeah, it's almost like off to the side. It's very weird.
Do you have any idea? I don't know if you've noticed this, I'm sure you have, but there's 2 moments like that we've had so far. We'll see if there's any others. But one of the moments on the dock when Vera was looking at her wallet, and then just then after the poker goes through Chili, for some reason like it suddenly goes into like slow motion for a few frames. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. I think that's just they didn't have enough coverage to really, hold on it for some reason. I guess we should say, too, because it's going to come up even more ridiculous later, but there's a lot of shit on strings in this movie.
Oh, yeah. The snake earlier is the worst one, I think.
The snake is on a string. The spear gun is on a string. Like, and they get so carried away with the string shit that, like, I don't know if you ever noticed this, Trev, but when she's in the boat at the end, the duck is on a string that flies by. The boat is on the string. Like, they really got carried away with string usage.
I mean, to be fair with the spear gun, like back when they made this, I don't know any other way to shoot a spear at the camera without it being on a string, you know? So, I mean, I'll give them some leeway on that one, but yeah.
Which jumping back a second to the spear gun attack, what did you think of Jason hiding behind a pole to shoot the spear gun? It's very awkward.
I wish it had been more like Looney Tunes-esque, where he's like, the pole is like completely thin, and there's no way that he could actually be behind it, and he pokes out from behind it. That would have been great. Yeah.
But, it was all, what you call it, technicalities. Now, I feel like a little like, and again, like, I feel like they're just settling into the formula of here, we got to get to the final girl. Because it's like, this is the 3rd movie where we're doing, in a row, where we're doing a final girl. So, like, everybody feels expendable. But even though I like his death, and again, we'll get to see some good string action here with Rick's death. But even though I like the way his death ended up overall, it feels very unsatisfying that, like, we saw him get snatched by Jason off camera. Like,
a little bit, but I think the death makes up for it. This is my favorite kill in the movie. Like, even though it's like a clear puppet head and it does look a little goofy, it's just this is like the right kind of 3D stupid for me.
Yeah.
I always enjoy this. It's a GIF I still like using in chats, and just in general, it's a good one.
Whoa, there he goes. It's actually especially for the time, it's a pretty good phony head. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if they could have done like more of a pneumatic thing where air pressure popped the eye out to where they didn't have to do the string gag, I think it would have been cool. But
Now here's really quick before you say. I just want to point out when I said earlier that I would give credit where credit was due. I said this is not one of my favorite entries, and that's definitely true. And I've talked about the two big problems. But from this point on, I'm pretty much on board this movie. I think this last act is awesome. I think, and like when I talk about like how I prefer Ginny and everything, but this final Chris Jason battle is one of the better final girl versus Jason sequences in the entire franchise. And I think a big part of it is that this is a really good back and forth between the two characters. And unlike in part 2, which ultimately I prefer as a whole more, we talked in that commentary about how they have to make Jason look foolish a lot. There's that moment where he hides on the chair and the chair collapses. And this version, like, she manages to evade him and fight back a lot without him ever seeming weak. It's just more like it's kind of like evenly matched fight. Not evenly matched, obviously stronger, but just they do a very good job of making this fight go on for a long time, making this like kind of chase go on a long time. And I think this entire sequence is really, really exciting. So yeah, this last like 15 minutes or so, I actually quite like a lot.
I guess we should talk, because Jason flooded the bathtub upstairs with some bloody clothing of his victims. What did you think of what do you think of like his little pranks when he does stuff like that?
Oh, I love that. I'm a huge fan of like the prankster slashers. I love when Michael Myers does that. I love when Jason does it. Again, tropes, cliches, but the leaving people around for, I love to think of that moment where they're propping these characters up, setting traps for people to trip wires, like there, right? Like that was clearly like, that's set up for some reason to where it would fall if someone walked by. For someone who's supposed to be kind of like not, like a mentally slow character, the fact that he's doing all this stuff is just hilarious to me.
Yeah, just to jump back before I forget it, the scene where Rick got killed, I actually wish they would have held on it just a little, there's one beat longer. I like that thing where she's looking out the front door and yelling for him, and he's like right around the corner getting like crushed by Jason pretty much. I like that thing of like he's right there and she doesn't even know it, you know what I mean? Like her friend, her boyfriend, whatever you want to call
this
him.
Looks great too. Like it's like the lighting is better here, like the wind coming in, like this all looks great. Yeah.
I guess we should say too, since the deaths are over, unfortunately the house that you're seeing here doesn't exist anymore, because they built it specifically for the movie. And when they did, when they filmed the movie, you do see a fire in the fireplace, but it was like a staged fire, controlled fire, gas or whatever it was, simulated. And some dumbass, unfortunately, Trev, I'm guessing without permission, went to the house. Because for years, people could trek here or get permission to go here, and there's like tons of photos of it in later years. But I want to say maybe 7 or 8 years ago, somebody went to the house, was like, "Oh, it'll be like the movie. We'll start a fire in the fireplace." Well, the fireplace didn't have an actual functioning chimney, so when like the debris and the stuff, it wasn't getting sucked up the chimney. It started coming back down into the cabin after a certain point of this person idiotically starting this fire. I always heard it was a fan who did it, which I'm sure it probably was, because the people who owned the place knew it wasn't a real chimney. And yeah, unfortunately, the house here, cabin, whatever you want to call it, it burned down about 10 years ago. So
that's too bad. I've never slowed it down to look, but do you think that was a Rick dummy being thrown through the window, or is that a legit stunt?
Okay, this is something we got to talk about. Richard, I can't remember, is it Richard Brooks or Richard Brooker? The guy
Richard
who played
Brooker.
Jason. Yeah. So he, like he's referred to as a stuntman, but he was actually really from the circus is where he got his start, and he was, he could do just about any kind of physical jump, fall, whatever, and he knew that the way they were rigging that one. First of all, it's a real person. And they knew that the way, like Richard Brooker, he even went to Steve Miner and said, "Hey, they're about to do this all wrong. This is going to go really sideways." They were going to launch a stunt person playing Rick, not the actual actor who played Rick, not Paul Kratka, but they put him on like one of those pneumatic things where like you step on it and it launches you. Mm-hmm. And it was supposed to launch this stunt guy through the window, and they first attempt they put too much. He actually flew up onto the roof, and then they kept adjusting the air pressure down, whatever, and it was like they couldn't figure it out. So this poor guy, he hit the roof, he hit the side of the house. He did it multiple times, and he was like just getting like seriously, like if this were to happen on a movie set today, there'd be a huge lawsuit. You know what I mean? Like this guy hit his head so many times, like he had to be concussed. Eventually, they finally got it. And Richard, what was so frustrating was Richard Brooker was saying, like, let me do it, Steve. Just put me in the wardrobe, whatever. He's like, all you need is a trampoline in front of the window. I can run, I can jump on the trampoline, and I can fly right through that window, 100% safe. They're like, no, you know, the stunt union, we can't, blah, blah, blah. Like, Steve Miner, you know, couldn't get involved, or he couldn't change it or whatever. So he had to let the stunt coordinator, stunt guys do it. Apparently that guy took an amazing beating getting that one shot before they finally got it. So, yeah. I always thought it was a dummy, too, because he just gets launched so fast in it.
See, this is what I mean. This stuff is, and we just had another string knife, but beyond that, like this stuff is all great. Like stabbing him in the knee and him throwing the knife at her head, just narrowly missing her, smashing the window, him grabbing her at the window. Yeah, the back and forth here is just so good. I wish more of the entries in the franchise had extended sequences this effective between, you know, a single survivor and Jason. Not, I mean, well, there's one more survivor as we'll find out, but beyond that, this whole part is great.
Yeah, and the thing I like about Chris is I can't, you know, obviously, you know, when she gets there, before she knows people are being killed, obviously she can't know what she doesn't know. But when she knows what's going on, I don't feel like any of her moves were dumb or fumbling at all.
That's what I mean. Yeah, this is like all like legit, and
that was a great stunt. Jason getting hit with the log and falling over the thing. I guess a little bit more about the mask, which I thought was weird, Trev, was if I think there's actually a featurette on the Paramount disc, but not the Scream Factory. Like a lot of the Paramount stuff got ported over to Scream Factory, but not all of them. But there was a thing about the mask where the guy who made the mask talked about it, because like you said, they had to make multiple copies. Like there's the one Shelley wears, and then it's really obvious if you really pay attention. But like Jason obviously needs a much bigger mask to carry, you know, cover that massive head. But the thing I thought was interesting about the mask maker was he said it's actually clear plastic, and then on the inside he painted it white, and then the little triangles or the little things, they're actually glued on pieces. I found that interesting, and it was said in one of the little behind the scenes featurettes, and I think also in the commentary, there was some debate about how many masks were made. Somebody thought there was only one. Somebody said, I think there was a couple. But either way, like the main one, supposedly, the actual Jason mask, I can't remember the guy's name. It was either one of the writers or producers. I think one of the producers. He had it like on a post, hanging on a post for like 10 plus years, like I think outside. And they said just the sun and everything just rotted it away. I mean, Jason's original mask is literally lost to, you know, whatever, the elements of time. That's just unbelievable to me. That, like, I get these were B movies, you know, all the way, but like, you think that at least that would be one piece of memorabilia that somebody would have preserved, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Got to ask you, go to someone who's like, you know, just a couple years older than me, we grew up in the same generation. Were you ever Jason for Halloween as a boy?
I was, and
me too.
I was kind of a hand-me-down Jason. My dad, who I don't even think my dad had, unless we like caught him on cable or something, I don't think my dad really had seen any of the Friday the 13th movies. There was like, I want to say when I was about 10 years old, my mom and dad went to a Halloween party. So my dad, he bought a quote-unquote Jason mask, you know what I mean? It was pretty good. It was like hard plaster. I mean, it didn't look movie accurate or anything, but he went to a Halloween store and got it, and he took an old shirt and ripped it up, and he put blood on it, you know, the stage blood, and he actually stage blooded up an axe and took an axe with him to the party, which I would have loved to have been at that party. I don't even know whose party it was. It was an adults' party. So that was my Jason mask growing up, and I want to say a few years later, I got like a cloth, like, pullover mask that was like screen printed to look like a mummy, but kind of look like a rotting face. So I had that as like my under version, and then I put the hockey mask on top of it. So I wasn't just walking around with just like, you know, my head of hair with my Jason mask. But yeah, I was Jason for Halloween.
I got the. Oh, go ahead.
No, my clothing, however, was nothing resembling. It was
that's true.
Me in a jean jacket and a sweater or something.
Yeah, no. But I did this. I got like a really cheap bald cap, and I bought one of those like, those like very cheap, pure, like really clean white hockey masks you'd get at like a drugstore.
Yeah.
And I remember taking it outside and putting it in the dirt and dirtying it up, and then taking fake blood, which of course came in those like little tubes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And putting on the axe wound on the top, because by the time I did it, that was already like an iconic part of the mask, and I wanted to make sure it was there. So I put like this like jelly blood on the top to make it look like I had the axe wound. And then, I think I had like a fake, like a cheap rubber machete that probably like bent while I was carrying it around and wasn't straight, But yeah, I was Freddy and I was Jason. Or sorry, I was Jason and Freddy, both when I was a kid. I remember I was Freddy once, and we did like a school like Halloween costume parade where they had all the kids come to school in our costumes, then walk around the playground in our costumes. And I remember it was like a windy day and my Freddy hat blew off and I had to go chase it. That's a memory that's like locked in my head for some reason.
Yeah, like I was Freddy way earlier because I was like all about Freddy. I had a Freddy mask, Freddy glove.
Well, like Freddy was the one when we were kids. This is so weird because Freddy's obviously like the child molester and like the even more like kind of psychotic killer. He's the one who was like marketed to us as kids.
Yeah.
The one thing you can say about Friday the 13th is they really, when we were kids, they felt like transgressive and naughty. Like you weren't supposed to be watching these.
Yeah.
And obviously that was true of both franchises. But at the same time, we were going to stores and they were selling Freddy dolls, Freddy squirt toys. Remember those little Freddy heads you'd put in the water and squeeze, and then like the water would shoot out of his mouth?
Yeah.
There was so much Freddy merchandise.
Called? Yeah.
I don't know, but there was like so much Freddy merchandise for us. Whereas Jason, you could get the mask and everything, but he wasn't quite sold the same way.
Well, I think also too, it's because Friday the 13th kind of blew its load in terms of like its heyday. Because I think starting with 6, the box office started to drop off little by little. I think if like like this one part 3 would have come out like 4 years later, I think they would have been savvy enough to hype up the marketing machine. And I think also too, it just might have been New Line was like they needed money so bad that that's why they just merchandised the shit out of Freddy, whereas like Paramount kind of never wanted these things to linger on too much. But you think Cunningham would have done it at least on his own. But that's why there were so many generic Jason masks. They could have made a fortune just making official ones. But I mean, later they did, much later. But yeah, when he gets hung there, you ever notice, Trev, when he's like flying down, you can kind of see like the white underpainting that Richard Brooker's wearing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that was a great stunt though when he gets hung. I liked all that.
Yeah. No, I'm like I said, like this whole sequence. It's I have no complaints at this. Well, maybe when we get to the end, I'll talk about another complaint at the very end. But for the most part, this entire sequence is great, and I even like this like I mean, it's very simple, but like the blue sweater, like what just a good like basic iconic final girl look. If you want it like someone to be like a memorable image burned in your head.
Yeah, I liked how she had that jacket that got ripped apart when she was climbing out the window, and now she's down to this blue sweater. And this is a great moment, and like all this right here, I think this is good filmmaking by Steve Miner to kind of kind of draw it out, like you're kind of you're kind of catching your breath. Now, I mean everybody knows Jason isn't dead, but it's kind of like a little bit of the lull in the action. You kind of exhale. You start building the tension again once she opens up the door here, and he'll be, well, not standing, but he'll be swinging right there from the rope. And I think this is like a very iconic moment here when she realizes that he's still alive. He starts trying to get up off the rope. And then, of course, this is where he intentionally unmasks, but it's obvious that Richard Brooker pulled it up on purpose. But yeah, it's a great thing there. I have to say, too, and you kind of lose it later as he gets zombified, but I have to say, as a kid, even though I wasn't too terrified by the hockey mask look in itself, were you like me, Trev? Were you kind of freaked out, like, whenever a little bit, like, when you could see Jason's eyes through the mask?
No, I was just more like, even as a kid, I remember being like kind of confused as to how like it was like kind of inconsistent as to sometimes there's both eyes, then sometimes there's just the one.
Yeah.
I feel like there's maybe some inconsistency to the franchise as to which eye is like deformed and drooping on the head.
Yeah.
But yeah. Oh, here we go. Speaking of the axe wound, there it is. The moment.
That was great. Yeah, that's a great 3D shot too. But like, yeah, because when he takes his mask off, his one eye is like really drooped down low. Like if he put the mask on, they would never line up. But then when he has the mask on, you can see both eyes. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. What do you think of the brief reappearance of Ali? Like, Like, what's the purpose of it? I mean, obviously it's just meant to be like a little extra surprise. But do you wish that he came back and like was like back for a little bit longer than he was? That's what I always think. Like, it'd be cooler if he came back and actually like helped her for a little bit rather than just being instantly dispatched after, I guess, just hiding there for. I don't know if he was like. The insinuation is that he was passed out and that's when he came to. But
well, I like kind of the idea that he would pop up because, in all honesty, like it's very unexpected that he would because he's such a minor character. But the thing I don't like about it, his death feels so definitive because it's like when Jason kills him earlier in the film, it's kind of like the actual violence is off screen. You see Jason kind of straddle him and grab a giant wrench, and he hits him like 4 times in the we presume to be the head. But I'm just like, there ain't no way that guy would have survived that. I don't care who you are. Like, his skull would have been caved in. You know what I mean? Like, that's only my real problem with it. Like, it's fine to me that he pops up and just gets annihilated again. But, like, I just never buy his reappearance just on how definitive they made his death earlier. Yep, here we go with the duck that comes flying in on the... it's a real duck, but for some reason, I think just so he wouldn't get away and they could corral him easier to do multiple takes. Poor duck's got a string on him on his back leg. But yeah, no,
this is the moment I remember when on our last commentary I was a little confused about this ending. I was getting the deleted ending and the actual ending mixed up. You've seen the cut ending, right, where like with the decapitation?
I've only seen stills of it. I've never seen it. I can't remember it because I know we had this debate last time we did this. Was there ever a place that we could find it? I couldn't find it on the disc.
Well, but that's what I mean, like the image of it, right? Yeah. The image of him holding the head up. You've seen that, right?
Yeah, and it's clearly,
like the Stan Winston design. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is kind of the scariest moment to me, where he's all bloody face up in the window of the house.
Yeah, it's weird though. Like, why is he in there, and like, why does he look like he's trapped? I don't know.
Yeah, like he can't get out the window. But the fact that he's like all like basically to me the emotion that he's excited that he's like found her. I just took it that he was like looking for her. You know what I mean? Like he was going through the house and then, you know, he whatever saw her out the window. But just that thing of like he's like oh like he's excited. That always freaked me out. Like that's kind of why for a long time this was my favorite. After really not even so much like rewatching this one and having a different opinion, just again revisiting the other ones a couple times since then. You know, I've kind of like mellowed out on this one a little bit. Now, Jason's mom, quote unquote, that pops out, like this is real malarkey here that pops out.
Yeah, this is the other moment I hate. And like I know that I just said like, so I'm probably being hypocritical and take everything with a grain of salt because like I said, I love this whole franchise, and even the ones I don't like, I like. But it's another moment trying to, like, the problem was that they found themselves where they wanted to keep replicating that jump scare from the end of the first one. And with this one, right away, they kind of established, like, okay, well, that was just a dream again. But the problem is, she doesn't know who Jason is. There's no reason she would have a hallucination of his mom, because she doesn't even know that whole story. And in fact, a little bit interesting trivia. Did you know that this is you probably do, or maybe I don't know. This is the only Friday the 13th where the word Jason is never spoken in the film.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So she has no idea of Jason. She doesn't know his whole backstory. Why would she even fantasize his mom coming out of the water? Like, even if it is a fantasy, like, she doesn't know that. So I just can't stand that. It's like a final jump scare. I wish that wasn't in there.
Well, I agree with you that it's a bit of an error, but I'm wondering in some way, like that thing of like it doesn't make any sense, and like they're probably just like, oh, we need the cheap jump scare. But were they trying to like build up some kind of like actual supernatural tint to this? I mean, maybe that's the only thing I can think they're going for, because the makeup, like, it's not necessarily the greatest zombie Mrs. Voorhees make. First of all, it doesn't make any sense because her head is on her body again. Mm-hmm. But it's freaky that she has like little what look like to be real life snakes coming out of her face. But she also looks like one of those Jabba's skiff guards. Did you ever notice that?
Yeah.
Like from Return of the Jedi.
I think this shot right here is the reason I don't think there's actually a supernatural thing to it. Because if that was meant to be a moment where you're supposed to be like, well, was that real or not? You wouldn't then show him still laying in the barn with the wounds that she imparted on him. You would you wouldn't show his body at all, right? So you'd be like, well, maybe that did happen. Maybe she did see him on the beach and then she got attacked by the mom. But the fact that they make it clear that no, this was like a hallucination, that's why it doesn't really make any sense.
Well, it's clearly a dream because she sees Jason up in the window, right? He comes running down. He bursts through the door. He knocks it off the hinges, and he's running like to go jump in the water. She's like trying to paddle away, and then she looks up, and like not only is he not there, but like the door is fixed again, meaning, you know, obviously she hallucinated that. Doesn't it make it more sense since, like, okay, Jason's not really there? Like, doesn't it make more sense that Jason would come out of the water and get her? Like,
yes, for sure, yeah. I do like, though, I will say, I'm always a sucker for horror movies that end with the survivors seeming like they are crazy now. So yeah. I do like her kind of laughing maniacally in the cop car as they drive away.
You know, because we talked a little bit about the aborted attempts of what this film could be, you know, with, you know, Jenny from Part 2, Amy Steele, coming back and being a insane asylum. Like, when I watched this other night, Trev, because, you know, I had known about that, like, I was thinking, like, okay, now Chris is crazy at the end. Mm-hmm. Were they thinking, like, you know, we'll just set that up real easy because, you know, we'll have that in our back pocket. Maybe we can recycle that insane asylum, whatever, plot, whatever, for Part 4 if we have to go there.
That's not where I thought you were heading with that. I thought you were saying, like, could we have gotten to a point where, like, you know, Chris and Ginny are in, like, the same, like, institution or something, you know?
That would be awesome.
Yeah, it's like, you know, this is a franchise that always seemed like the potential is there to bring back a lot of characters from past entries, and really the only place you can get that is, I believe you are aware, Goat, that obviously we know we almost had Freddy versus Jason versus Ash. It did not happen, but
Thank you, Sam Raimi.
The treatment for it was turned into a graphic novel, and then they did a sequel to that graphic novel called the Nightmare Warriors, I believe was the title, and that actually brought back a lot of characters from the previous Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street movies, kind of showing where some of these survivors have been. Some pretty cool stuff in there. Like, one of the ideas in that was that the Dream Warriors from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, all the ones who were murdered in that film, their spirits are now actually called, like, the Dream Police, and their spirits, like, police, like, the dream sphere and try to look out for like other demons like Freddy. But you also have, like, return appearances of a lot of the surviving final girls from the previous Nightmare on Elm Street, or sorry, Friday the 13th movies as well. So stuff you can do in the comics that you can't do when you don't have to actually worry about getting the actors, or, you know,
or how they're
aging, or if they retired, or
Yeah, like, I think that's a good concept, and, like, how you said, like, the survivors. But, like, isn't it weird that, like, they flirted with that insane asylum or mental hospital shit for so long, and then they finally did it with Tommy Jarvis? Like, well, they really did it twice, because they have Part 5 Tommy Jarvis, and then they have Tom Matthews in Part 6, who actually escapes from the place and does whatever.
Yeah, with Horseshack. But we'll talk about that in a couple of years, probably.
Yeah, about 12 years. We'll get to that. So Trev, the credits have completely rolled, and there's just one thought that I had that I didn't get to, a question I wanted to pose to you, and we kind of talked about it, like, on other things and touched upon it, but I think especially in horror documentaries that cover the horror genre, you see it said a lot that horror films in particular, sometimes more than any other genre film, they mirror the society and the politics of the time. And you know, like a lot of people mirror Texas Chainsaw Massacre with the Vietnam War and just other things. And I was racking my brain the other night watching this. I could not think of any real societal commentary or political mirroring or anything. Not only just in this one, Part 3, but really the whole franchise. Like, what do you think? I mean, do you see any sort of, like, actual social commentary going on in the Friday movies?
So I actually have thought about this, and I think, no, not specifically in the same way that, like, you know, like a Night of the Living Dead or Texas Chainsaw Massacre was. I will say what I think you see with the Friday the 13th films is that in the early 80s, obviously, this is, you know, so Reagan is president now, and America is starting to slide back over, after the 60s and 70s, slide back over into a very heavily conservative, you know, political domination, and society becomes more and more conservative. So I don't think the Friday the 13th films were any particular political commentary, but I do think they were being made by filmmakers who are once again taking glee in and probably for financial reasons mostly, but taking glee at the being able to be transgressive and annoy like that kind of conservative majority that was suddenly in power, because they knew that would create controversy and that would sell. The people who were making films like Silent Night, Deadly Night, and Friday the 13th, they were doing it because they knew it would get attention, because in this like very political, in this very conservative sphere, these films would be boycotted. These films would get write-ups in newspapers. People would say this is trash, and they would laugh all the way to the bank. So I don't think the films themselves are commenting on it, but I think the films are made as a financial reaction to where the nation was going. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, it does. And like another thing I was thinking about too, whereas like Nightmare on Elm Street kind of tried it and kind of failed a little bit with Freddy's Revenge Part 2, is they never really like, I don't know, like they never really got away from the final girl thing in Friday the 13th. Like even when Tommy Jarvis was taken over later, like he always had a girl with him. Like, you know what I mean? Like Melanie in Part 5. Actually, Melanie, I think that's her name, the lady in Part 5. Might be a real name, I can't remember, but the lady that's always running around Reggie the Reckless, she's really more the main character than Tommy Jarvis is in Part 5. And then when Tommy Jarvis kind of does become the main character in Part 6, even he's got the sheriff's daughter who also plays a large part. Like, why do you think they never like fully leaned into having a male, like a clear-cut male lead for any Friday movies? Because I was thinking of that. Like,
well, I would push back a little bit on that and say I do think Part 6 is actually the one where you can say Tommy is pretty front and center, even though. Okay. Maybe we said this before, but I have a special affinity for Megan, the sheriff's daughter in Part 6.
She's awesome. Yeah,
I think she's also like the one I have the biggest crush on. Mm-hmm. She to me is like the hottest girl in Friday the 13th. Probably, maybe that's just because of when I saw the movie or whatever. But I really do think that's Tommy's movie. But beyond that, I think you're right that it's primarily kind of driven by final girls. And I don't know. I just think like. I don't think that's just a Friday thing. Like you said, with Nightmare on Elm Street, it's only Part 2. With Friday the 13th, it's only Part 6. I think there's just something about, leaning into what had become, in slashers in general, how many final boys are there? You have The Burning.
Yeah.
You have the sequels we just mentioned, but that's always like the exception to the rule.
Yeah, I think on the sweetheart meter, for me personally, it's all about Part 3, because I would place Chris and Vera above everybody else. But I don't know. I don't know why.
Even more than Terry in Part 2?
I was thinking of that because they showed her body at the beginning. I'm like, Terry was like... I don't know, like, I guess my own personal taste, like, Terry was the shit, but Terry was also designed to be the shit right sitting front and center in your face. Like, I'd probably take Jenny over Terry. Even. Yeah.
But, oh, yeah. You mean, like, yeah, I thought like, we're talking looks or, like you said, sweetheart. But
yeah. But yeah, like, I guess you're kind of right with Part 6, but then I just always remember that, like, how much she has to save, Megan has to save Tommy's ass out of, break him out of jail, drive the car, where him to get away, everything like that. But but he does man up and totally take on Jason at the end on the lake and everything. So yeah. I can see your part for sure. I can see your point for sure with that. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot of fun. Not like we have to, but it kind of sucks we have to wait. I think until next May to do another one of these. But I was going to ask you, I think you kind of already alluded to this earlier, Trev, but we've clearly developed a pattern now where, we made it all the way to Part 3. How far are you willing to go with these commentaries? Are you just going to go up through the Paramount years, or are you all the way through?
Oh, I'm all the way through, baby. I love this franchise. I don't think... For me, I know like the New Line ones are like a little bit more divisive, but since it's going to be years till we get to them anyways, I might as well just say now, like, I am a dyed-in-the-wool Jason X defender. I really, really enjoy Jason X. Jason Goes to Hell is one of my least favorite ones, but I think it's a very interesting movie. That's the thing, it's a very fascinating failure to me because it's clearly the biggest odd man out of the franchise. So I see sometimes people just dismissing it as total trash, and I get where they're coming from, but you can't completely dismiss that film because it's so weird. It's worth talking about. And yeah, I like Freddy vs. Jason, and I like the remake. So I mean, I'm all for going all the way to the end. If you are.
Oh yeah, for sure. I like touch on Jason Goes to Hell. Like I still remember like it was yesterday. I got the Topps comic book. I got it came with the little glow in the dark thing. I remember the disappointment in that movie because I was like, it started out like the best Friday the 13th movie ever, kind of, and I'm like, oh, this is so crazy, this is so cool, and then it just went the direction it did, and I was like, I never hated the movie, but I was kind of just like, okay, this is what it is, whatever. But then like when it becomes Jason again in the last 10 minutes, like it was like a switch flipped, and I was like right back on board. You know what I mean? It was just like.
I do love the look of Jason in that film with like the tumors all over his head and the head growing around the mask. I think that looks awesome.
Yeah, like that's one of my favorite Jasons actually, and it kind of sucks that it's on screen as little as it is. You know what I mean? But I guess you're going for like even this. I mean, he doesn't really get the stalk and slash a lot in it, actual Jason, because it's all the different actors in that one. But I would say even when he is Jason, it's still. He has even though it's still Kane Hodder, I feel like he has a much different personality than he did in 6 and 7.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll get.
But
to
I would
it
love. We'll get to it. I'm really looking forward to doing the Jason Takes Manhattan commentary because that's the one I enjoy defending the most because I think to me that's like the one that I feel like I sometimes have to make the biggest argument for because I don't think that one deserves like half the hate it gets. So.
Like, because I didn't really fully get on board with the Jason movies till part 6 on video, and then from that point I was on board, and I saw 7, 8. I saw them all actually from that point in the theater. I was always stoked to go see them. So, like, to me, like, even though I had gone back with my friends, because every summer my friends, I don't know why, they always wanted to re-rent all the Friday the 13th movies. We always rewatch them every summer. But, like, yeah, like, Jason Takes Manhattan, like, just like everybody, I was, like, hyped, the trailer, like, oh, shit, he's going to New York. And I know everybody says that's, like, a con job of a movie because they don't show up till later, and it's not really New York, it's Canada, or for me, personally, however old I was, like, the ending is a little weird, the way they kill Jason is a little weird, but other than that, like, I was on board with that movie. I had no qualms about that movie, like, however old I was, 11, 12 years old, whatever, seeing that in the theater.
It's entirely a matter of a title that's, like, making people mad, because if that movie, I've always said if that movie was just called Jason Takes a Cruise or something, you wouldn't have anything to bitch about, and as I've said, and this is my go-to defense for that movie, what is ultimately scarier, being in a gigantic city with Jason scaring you or chasing you, or being stuck on a boat with Jason? Like, that's the scarier part of the movie, right? Where you can't go anywhere.
I mean, that's the thing too, is like, I mean, I guess like you said, it's like how you take it, but like, even from the first time I saw it, I thought the cruise ship part was awesome. Like I know it's not the same as like tearing up city blocks and fucking murdering people in a diner or whatever, but to me, seeing Jason on this giant cruise ship and he's like in the party room, he's like, to me that was a movie compared to the previous Friday movies. Like, like, I mean, now I look at it, I can tell it's a low budget movie, but like at the time as a kid, like it seemed like this huge movie to me. I wasn't I think the only thing I was like a little like kind of like on was John Carl Buechler did such amazing design with the rotted away Jason and 7, and that's my only kind of like misgiving with Takes Manhattan, is you can tell that the undersuit is just a little more just cost effective.
And when the mask comes off, it looks awful.
It's just not on par with what came before. I don't even hate it. It's just weird and not on par, but I guess we'll get to it. I mean, it's like we're almost jumping into it now already. We can't contain ourselves.
Well, that's the thing. Like, it's funny because I was going to say this earlier, but in terms of this, like how much I love this franchise and the fact they said like, like part 3 is probably might be in my bottom 3 of the franchise, honestly. But I just totally enjoyed watching it with you. I'll probably watch it again within the next 2 years. And that's the thing, we were talking about, do I watch one of these every Friday the 13th? No, but what I am more likely to do, and I've done a lot, is at least once every 2 years, I do just run through the entire franchise again. Because the thing is, they are all only 90 minutes, and I think you will, every once in a while as a horror fan, you get that hankering to say, well, I could watch a Friday the 13th, or I could just spend a weekend and kind of like blow through them all again. And I've done that multiple times, and that's why I've always felt justified, rebuying them and owning them. And I'm sure sometime within the next year or so, I'll probably, because I got the Scream Factory box set. I have barely really dove into it yet, and I want to. So I will probably do a full franchise rewatch sometime within the next year.
Now, I was going to ask you, when you kind of get on the rewatch train with these, do you go in order? Because I don't. I usually pick a random one, like, oh, I feel like watching this one Friday, and then once I watch it, I'm hooked, and then I jump and grab another one.
That's interesting. I usually go in order, and as you said that, I was thinking, like, oh, I shouldn't. Like, I've done an order so many times before. If anything, maybe next time I should go in reverse order. I've never done that. I should go, like, backwards, just for fun.
Yeah, because I like usually with me it always starts when I do a rewatch. Like I'll just get a hankering for like a really weird one, like part 5. I'll be like, oh, I want to watch part 5. It's like a little bit of a weird one, and then I'll watch it, and then that will I kind of like that. I want to go back to more traditional Jason, and then I'll watch part 3 or 4 or whatever. I think the only one I haven't, and again, I've only recently acquired it, when the Scream box set came out, but I think the one I've definitely seen the least was Jason Goes to Hell for obvious reasons. But I mean, I don't know, like I really don't mind that movie, and I kind of like that it's got the guy that that was another reason I didn't hate Jason Goes to Hell, was it had the guy on it that I really like from the Friday the 13th TV show.
It's John LeMay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's like, and plus I like Aaron Gray, in all honesty. And I mean, come on, dude, we got to roll out the red carpet for our boy, what's his name, Creighton Duke.
Creighton Duke is great. Creighton Duke is the best thing about a bad movie, for sure.
Yeah, I think we say that every time we talk about Friday the 13th movies. We're like, oh yeah, Creighton Duke. Yeah. But yeah, for sure. So I mean, I guess we'll leave it at that. Not to ramble on too long, but I'm sure just the Friday the 13th vibe when this episode comes out, people will be feeling it. People will be doing their own personal rewatches to some level. So
I'm sure my Twitter feed will be mostly people giving their rankings of the franchise, as happens every Friday the 13th.
That's like the most pointless shit ever to me.
Did you see the thing? I don't know if you saw this on social media when the Scream Factory box set came out. You were nobody if you didn't then take the discs and put them in the box in the order of your preference. That's what everyone was doing on Twitter and Facebook, and it's like all the horror fans were saying, "Here's my ranking, but here they are in order in my box."
It's kind of like the thing we're just talking right now, like with Takes Manhattan and Goes to Hell and stuff. Is like we can sit here and we can split hairs and everything, Trev, but like let's be really, really honest. Let's get down to brass tacks. Like, would you rather watch Jason Takes Manhattan, or like watch whatever shit, or watch Sexy Snake Eyes: The Rise of G.I. Joe? You know what I mean? It's like we're gonna watch this old shit, because even when it's like not the best and it's flawed, it's still better than like a big chunk of stuff coming out now.
Friday the 13th is, for me, and I think a lot of horror fans feel this way, it is the ultimate comfort food horror franchise. Yeah. Like you know exactly what you're getting with each of them. Even if you hate it, you're probably still going to like it. Yeah. They're all enjoyable. They're all so simplistic that even when you do something like send him into space or have him become a worm who hops from body to body, there's still the basic, like it's not breaking the mold too much. And yeah, it's just a really fun franchise. And you were saying earlier the thing about like why are they so dead set on making another one? And I get what you're saying, where yes, it's a shame they're not trying to create new slashers or new franchises. But at the same time, like in my perfect world, we would be getting like a new Jason movie every year still, and just in this same model of the early days of just like cranking them out with no thought given to like continuity or logic. I just want a cheap $2 million Jason movie every year. Let them be of varied quality. I don't care. I'm going to see them all. I'm going to love them all.
Yeah, and like, I mean, we know the economics of the filmmaking, Trev, especially in the age of streaming services. I mean, obviously, I would want it to come out to the theaters and have that excitement and everything that everything has. But I mean, I'll go even further. I'll say $8 million. There ain't no way in hell. I don't care what studio's distributing and what it's going to do, what it's going, whatever. Ain't no way you plunk $8 million down for a Friday the 13th movie that you're going to lose money, like at all. Yeah. Like at all. And I know we kind of say that every time we talk about it, because we're always like, I guess we got to get out of this mindset, honestly, Trev, because like I always say that too. It's like even like we were saying, like even like a new franchise, just like greenlight them all back to back, get different directors. Let's see if we can do that Exquisite Corpse style filmmaking. Just hand the baton to the next guy. It's like, But it's like studios just don't care. It's like studios could do everything we're talking about right now, but they're like, let's just look for an old board game to make into a movie. That's really exciting. Look at the cross promotion with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Maybe if we could convince the studio to make a movie of the Friday the 13th video game, they would finally like go somewhere with it.
They're like,
give us a purple Jason. You know,
like,
the wolves attacking the people outside.
Like, you even bury the fact that it ever was a franchise. You're like, there was this video game that came out, and we're like, we drug up the like sales numbers, 2.3 million sold on just one video game console alone. Imagine the possibility. Oh yeah, okay. And then like this is the concept art of the killer, and you bring out that little doll that they made of the purple face one.
I have that doll. I have that figure. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't bought any of those yet. I need to get some of those.
Target usually has a good selection of like Jason figures.
Yeah, like I need to go and get this because the only ones I have is I have Predator 2, that Predator of that line, and then I just recently, like a month ago, I got the Halloween 2 Michael Myers, and yeah, I don't know, like I'm kind of torn for the Jason to get either the part 3 or part 4 because they're very similar. Like I like part 3 a little bit more as a movie, but I think the part 4 figure, from what I remember, is a little more dynamic looking. But yeah, interesting. Why don't they just listen to us, Trev? Everybody would make lots of money and people would be happy. Why don't they just listen to us?
I know. I've been saying that forever, but
I guess we do have to, even though they're not really doing that, I guess we have to tip our hats to Shudder, right? Like, they got a lot of original movies on there.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I love Shudder, but you know what Shudder doesn't have is new Friday the 13th.
No, they don't.
If Hollywood listens to us, look, it'll be me and Goat, and we'll team up with LeBron James, and we'll finally bring you the Friday the 13th movie everyone's been waiting for.
You know what I'll do is I'll just like slap a briefcase down on the table, like Cunningham, Victor Miller, each on one side of the table, and be like, I know it's going to kill you guys, but you just split it. Just split it. Which I think Victor Miller would be fine with. I don't know about Sean Cunningham. Real quick, I guess, I know we're running a little bit long here past the movie's length, but might as well just bring it up. Where are you at on the Chucky TV series trailer?
I mean, the trailer was whatever, but I have complete faith in it as a concept. To me, that is the most consistent franchise of them all in this like slasher icon realm. I think there's something really admirable about Don Mancini being involved from beginning to end and still being the creative voice guiding it and doing different things with it, like pivoting when he needs to and saying, and not even when he needs to, but just keeping it fresh for himself and for the fans. So, you know, my favorite one is Bride of Chucky, but I love that after that, then he kept doing different things, right? That then he went very slapstick and very ridiculous with Seed of Chucky, then went back to this like very kind of claustrophobic Hitchcockian entry with Curse of Chucky, Cult of Chucky being like almost like the most artistic one he's made, and now doing a TV show and saying that the TV show, even though it looks like its own kind of narrative, he's been very clear about how no, it's still going to follow the continuity, which if you've seen the last Chucky film ended on like a very kind of intriguing cliffhanger. So to see how they're going to tie all that in and resolve it with, you know, Fiona Dorff's character and everything, like I'm all about it. I love that franchise, and it has not done me wrong yet. The only one, you know, like my least favorite is Child's Play 3, and again, it's like the Friday thing where that's my least favorite, and I still love that movie. So I mean, I would say love, but I still enjoy that movie.
Same here. Yeah, I'll be honest, I was very dismissive of the Chucky TV show. Because I was just like, well, how are they gonna? I mean, if it was like made for like even like AMC or something, I'd say it. But just the fact that it was USA show, whatever, I was like, it's gonna be corny, whatever. But I gotta say, like the concept of like the way they kind of laid out the boy gets Chucky, and then like Chucky kind of comes into his life with the school bullies and shit. I was intrigued. Like I actually really want to see it, but Yeah,
and I think, like, you know, in terms of it being on Sci-Fi, you know, Sci-Fi had Channel Zero, which, you know, is a really strong horror show. So I think, you know, like that you know, I think, you know, obviously there's not going to be a lot of swearing or anything as much in the movies, but whatever. I think it can still be violent. They might even do like longer cuts for the media releases, the physical media releases. We'll see, you know.
That would be awesome if we got like, it's like, okay, like you watched the show, you liked it, everything. Now here's the Blu-ray that has like gore that you didn't get to see. That would be awesome.
I wouldn't be surprised. I know like slightly different scenario, but like the Hannibal show, the Blu-rays are the producer cuts, which are longer than the actual NBC cuts.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it, guys, for all your spooky talk, and hopefully that will be the last horror movie we cover before this end of the year, because, I mean, we do have Mr. Boogie. Let's be honest, we got Mr. Boogie. Bride of Boogie coming. Yeah, mm-hmm. we got that coming up, but you know, people don't like to, I listen to the downloads, Trev, and people, the last thing they want to hear in the month of October is a horror episode, so. Same with Christmas, no Christmas episodes. So with that note, I just want to say, if somebody was really like dying to find a podcast, Trev, and they wanted to all know about, you know, Hellfire Gala, like where would they go for that?
Well, if they wanted to hear about the Hellfire Gala, the big party that Emma Frost just threw on Krakoa, I guess they could listen to Days of Future podcast, Examining the X-Men, my show that I do with my buddy Joe, all about the X-Men. And, you know, and then if they got like a hankering, you know, also to kind of hear about, unlike Friday the 13th, which, you know, was very, very successful and got many, many sequels, if they wanted to hear maybe about, you know, a film that tried to be the next Friday the 13th and fell on its face, they could listen to Failure to Franchise, the show that I do with my buddy Chris, where we look at movies that were meant to start franchises and never got their intended sequels.
Exactly. I don't know about you, Trev, but I was like heartbroken back in 2015. Like my favorite cartoon ever as a kid came into a movie, and I thought, oh, this is going to be gold mine. We're going to have sequels. We're going to have a whole franchise. Jim and the Holograms did not light up the box office.
It did not. It did not. A rare misfire for Blumhouse.
Exactly.
Jason Blum's Midas touch couldn't bring Gem and the Holograms to life. I know you. I don't know who's more disappointed, you or Kesha.
Yeah,
who was apparently slated to be the villain in part 2.
Poor Kesha. But yeah, listen to this podcast, guys, when you're not wanting to hear us talk about horror movies or bodily fluids and everything else we talk about on this show. A lot of gross stuff was in the Critters 2 episode, from what I remember. but it's like they're coming out of eggs. They're eating people. They ate the Easter Bunny's crotch. I mean, how could you cover that film in good taste?
I don't think you go into a movie called Critters 2 not expecting to be, you know, getting a little grossed out and seeing some nasty stuff. Yeah.
So anyway, that's it, Trev. Obviously, thank you for joining me here tonight. But more than, you know, double thank you for we're keeping the Friday streak going. We'll keep the lights on here until Jason is finally dead and buried.
I can't think of a better way to ease my way into old age than just doing these Friday the 13th movies with you over the next few years. So
it's going to be the best. Maybe that will be like the last episode ever. Like the Skype connection won't be too good in the nursing homes that we're in, and we'll just have to pack it up with the final.
Well, by the time we get to like the Friday the 13th remake, we'll be like streaming these movies directly into our brain somehow. You know,
yeah.
They won't. Yeah.
And like when they stream it in your brain, like you go through a menu before the movie starts and you like recast the movie. So yeah. So like when you're doing like the streaming version of Part 3, you can replace Rick with Channing Tatum. So
I was gonna say you can only replace him with like Jeff Bezos himself to play Jason now.
Bezos, man, that rocket ship, very phallic.
Very, very phallic.
Very phallic. Very phallic. Very evil. All right, everybody. Again, thanks a lot for listening to us dribble on about one of our favorite mass murderers, Jason Voorhees. And we'll catch you again here soon in the movie graveyard.
You're listening to the Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network. Yeah, it's a mouthful. For more great shows, visit electronicmediacollective.com.